goes by Jazz Martinez, age 10, passed away unexpectedly this past Saturday, August 10th. He'll be remembered as being the best big brother to his baby sister. So I just ask in honor of his age that we have 10 seconds of a moment of silence. Thank you. Out of respect for some of the locally elected officials who have come in this evening, I'd like to welcome Ward 2 Councilman Jeremy Ricks, Ward 5 Councilman Ed Lattiser, and Ward 9 Councilman Vinnie Gebhardt. En route is also Ward 8 Councilman Anthony Sinapi. So we thank them for their attendance this evening, and if I've missed anyone who has walked in after the fact, I apologize. Before this committee tonight, we have two matters of business. First item under new business, discussion action, district-wide bilingual SLP and secondary special education teacher requests to be presented by the
Move approval. Second.
member from the administration present this.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the school committee. The Special Services Department is requesting the approval of two unbudgeted positions. The first position is a 1.0 secondary special educator. The request is due to a significant increase in students returning from out-of-district placements. This situation necessitates immediate expansion of our transition program. The second position is for a 1.0 bilingual speech-language pathologist. The 1.0 speech-language pathologist will strengthen our ability to serve bilingual students and expand our capacity to support monolingual students.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Looking for a motion to move approval.
Move approval.
Made by Ms. Backes.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Testa. Ms. Hazelwood, any discussion?
Discussion.
Yep, go ahead. Ms. Hazelwood.
Ms. Hazelwood.
While I know it's mandatory that we support these students according to their IEPs, I just would like to know where the money comes from when it's unbudgeted. What line item will pay for this?
I'd have to check with the finance department and get you a better answer.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rollback, two questions. The first position, the special ed teacher, did you say that student's going into the transitions program?
To the transition program, yes, sir.
Okay, from out of district.
For our district, correct.
And then on the speech-language pathologist to serve multi-language learners, are we finding that we're having a pretty significant increase in those students?
Yes, sir. There's been a large increase of MLL students within the district, so this position would help us identify, evaluate, and service those students, as well as they'd be servicing monolingual students as well, which would help on the burden on our current SLPs.
And I think historically we've underreported MLL students too. So I think we probably have changed some internal practices, and now we're identifying true MLL students.
Correct.
And the need is there because state aid is reflected on the number
Yes.
of MLL students too. So if you're underreporting, you're not getting that in state aid. So it's important that we
Correct.
do all. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Just going
Ms.
forward,
Hazelwood.
when we have these positions that are coming before us and they are unbudgeted, and Mr. Allenbach, this isn't just for you, this is for every department, it would be right for us to know where those funds are going to come from, how they're going to cover these expenses that we haven't anticipated. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Hazelwood. I would echo her statements as well. I would also remark that joining us this evening at the table, in addition to legal counsel and members of the administration, we're joined by Quinn, who is a Warwick Public School student attending Hoxie. So, okay, good. My only question would be, what are the two schools that are benefactors, or is there one school of these positions?
So the SLP is district-wide, and the special educators for the transition program.
Great. You satisfied? All right. Well, given that Quinn is satisfied, any other comments from members of this committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
one
Testa.
more, thank you. With respect to identifying where the money comes from, I respectfully submit that at this point in time, it may not be that easy. When you have unbudgeted positions, which this district has faced every single year, it's up to the finance office to figure that out, and I'm not sure if in August, when your fiscal year just started, that you can actually identify a particular line item. But I would trust the finance office to be able to find the funds and then report out to us. I just don't know if our expectation is a little too high to have that at the meeting, that's all. Because I don't think it's as clear cut as just, take it from here to there, because the only thing that's certain in a budget is the budget it's always changing, especially when you have instances like this. So that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Olbach. Next item on the agenda is discussion update, construction of new high schools. It's going to be presented by a litany of people. However, before we present tonight, I'm just going to make a few remarks. So I first want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. Really appreciate it. I know that for many of you in this room, attending a school committee meeting is brand new to you. We run our rules, our meetings by Robert's Rules of Order, so that there's some decorum. I ask that as this presentation goes on, whether you're extremely in favor of what's being presented to you or not in favor of what's being presented to you, that you please allow the presenters to respectfully get their content out to the public here. I will state that tonight, many members of this committee are receiving the same information as you for the first time. We're hearing it for the first time. So as much as you want to hear the content being presented to you, we want to hear it as well. We have this piece of business before us this evening, and we want to get through that. So it's very important to us that there be no outbursts from members of the public. And if there are, we'll obviously address those as the meeting goes on. At one point in the meeting, there will be a point where we can have public comment. I do not want this to be misconstrued for Q&A. If you have any questions that you would like asked or answered, certainly you can email or message one of your members of the school committee, and we will ask that for you. After the meeting, if something pops into your head and you want a question answered, you can send it along to the school committee, and we will get that question answered for you. We'll forward that on to the appropriate person. I personally will take all the questions that have been sent to me over the past several weeks in preparation for this meeting and post them onto my personal campaign page, so that way you can see all the questions that have been asked and the responses that have been provided by the school department. And last, but certainly not least, so in going to various sporting events throughout the city, cookouts, etc., and hearing from members of the public and rumors and speculation or just general comments, this committee has elected tonight to hold this meeting to dispute those claims or affirm those claims. What I want to say is that tonight, what is presented to you is subject to change at a moment's notice. A perfect example of this would be I woke up this morning, Channel 10 ran a story on this evening's meetings. And I watched it, and they ran a soundbite of me speaking about some cuts that we were making.
about walking tracks being removed from the gymnasiums. Well, you'll see, because we saw the Pilgrim Gymnasium last week in the school committee meeting, the walking track is back in. So, obviously, a soundbite from April has, become irrelevant, because tonight, you'll see Pilgrim has a walking track back within that school. So things are subject to change very quickly. It's subject to change based on cost. What is presented tonight could change tomorrow morning. Our architects, Sam and Sococcio and Associates, they're working very hard with our OPM, all of which will introduce themselves to you very shortly here. And they're working very hard to work within the confines of the $350 million check that all of you have so generously signed to this city and to the future of our city, being the children. So I just wanted to make those comments, get them on the record this evening, so that way you're all aware that as we progress through this process, things will change. There'll be ebbs and flows, there'll be additions, there'll be deletions, there'll be modifications, but I just wanted to make sure that tonight you guys came here to get an update, figure out what's changed since 2022, and then also a great education on the process that we have to work through. Every time that I speak to our Director of Capital and Construction Projects, as well as our OPM, I learn something new. And so I'm excited tonight that they're going to share all of that with you as well. After their presentations, or throughout their presentations, I'm thinking that we'll stop at the end of each one of the slides, whether it's finance related or design. We'll open up to questions and comments from members of the committee. Then when the presentation ends, we'll open it up for public comment for each and every one of you. I just want to be very clear, we have a lot of people here. It looks like a lot of people that likely want to speak. Public comment is restricted to 3 minutes per person, 45 minutes in totality. If there's a motion made by any member of this committee to extend that beyond the 45 minutes, we'll certainly do so. But I just want to be very open, upfront, honest, and transparent with each and every one of you. Owner's project manager. They'll get to that very shortly, sir. Thank you. The last thing I'll end with is why did we select tonight? I know that's been out there in the ether online, that there's been competing priorities within the district. Many members of our administration, their focus right now is reopening of schools for the upcoming 24 to 25 school year. So next week, that's going to be their priority. So it wasn't going to be a good idea for us to set this up tonight. We're very fortunate. We have our Director of Elementary Education here, Curriculum, our Director of multiple different areas now, Secondary Education, our Superintendent. We're tying up a lot of resources here tonight, so they're going to be focused on reopening schools next week. After that, in September, we have open houses. We have school kickoff events at the elementary level, which are great, and we also have fall sports kicking off. So if we didn't hold it this week, and plus, as you can see, we have a lot of great people over here who are associated with the project that we had to coordinate with their schedules well in advance. If we didn't hold it this week and on this particular day, we were likely doing it way out there, okay? And what I didn't want is anyone in the community coming to this body and saying the week before bulldozers start showing up to Pilgrim and Tollgate High School, we don't know anything. So that's why it's being presented to you this evening. So with that, I'll turn it over to our presenters.
Sorry, guys, I'm a little short. I apologize. Good evening, everyone. This is by far the largest crowd I've ever spoken in front of. So please bear with me. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm really excited about the presentation we have to show you tonight. My name is Chris Spiegel. I'm a project executive with Left Field Project Management. We are the owner's project managers for for the Tollgate and Pilgrim High School projects. We were brought on in March to assist the district with this plan to make sure the project remains on time and on budget, and that is our sole focus. Next slide, please. So the agenda for tonight is we will introduce the project team. We will discuss the RIDE process in general. We'll also talk about how reimbursement works, and we'll show the project budget where we currently are. We'll talk about our project schedule. We have 2 presentations tonight, and then we'll have the public comment portion tonight. And in terms of introductions, next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I am Chris Spiegel. Some things you should know about me is that I've been building schools in Rhode Island for the better part of the last decade, but more importantly, I'm also a father. I have an 8-year-old, and I have a 4-year-old in Rhode Island's public school systems. I've been a coach before. I'm active in my community as a member of the Special Education Advisory Committee, and there's also a big school building project going on in my town. I live on the same street as an elementary school that's having a major project, so hopefully I can empathize a little bit with what some of you are going through here tonight as possible abutters to the project. With me, I also have Secotio and Associates Architects. Secotio, if you guys could raise your hands, and you'll get to meet them a little bit more later. On the left field team, I have Matt McBurney and John Bates over here. We have SOM Architecture. SOM, if you guys want to go ahead and raise your hands. And of course, we have representatives from Dimeo. Dimeo is our construction manager. Dimeo, you guys want to raise your hands? Great. So as you can see, this isn't even the full team. We have a lot of people working very, very hard on this project. Building 2 high schools simultaneously is not a small ask, especially considering the current construction market that we are currently in with all of these other schools being built in Rhode Island. As such, we focus 100% of the time on making sure we can bring these projects on time and on budget. That is our focus, and we believe the designs that we have for you today will help that. So in terms of the RIDE process, so as you know, stage 1, or you know what, excuse me, I'm going to assume that people don't know. So the RIDE process is a 4-step process during which we submit a series of submissions to the Rhode Island Department of Education. And the reason that we follow this process is because of reimbursement. There is an opportunity, a generational opportunity right now for the Rhode Island Department of Education to reimburse above and beyond what you typically get in terms of reimbursement from the state. This allows communities like Warwick to create a generational investment for a fraction of the cost of what it would typically be if you were to pay for this and finance this all by yourself. So this is a critical component of why we are going through this process. If we do not go through this process, we do not qualify for reimbursement. So there are a lot of gates and checkpoints that I'm going to talk about coming up here in the next few minutes, but these are to ensure that we follow the RIDE process, but also make sure that what we are designing and what we are eventually building meets with the educational program. That educational program was developed during stage 1 and stage 2. Stage 1 is where you identify the needs. It's where you go through all of your schools, it's where you talk to all of your educators, your administrators, your department heads. You figure out what is currently working for the school, what currently isn't working for the school. More importantly, how do we see teaching and learning happening, not just in 5 years down the line when these schools are built, but in 10 years, 20 years. We are building you schools for the next several generations of Warwick students. In stage 2, you take what you've learned, all of that data, and you develop a preliminary solution. This preliminary solution is used for budgeting purposes. Much like the school committee and the town councilors that you have before you, this is an exercise in being a good steward of taxpayer money. You develop a design based on an educational program to show RIDE that this is how much the project costs, this is how we feel we can come in on budget, and this is the educational program. That is eventually reviewed by RIDE and approved by a council made up of governor's appointees. Until you go through that process, you may not start stage 3. That process was approved by the Council on Elementary and Secondary Education in May of 2022. Once you move past stage 2, next slide please, we get into stage 3. Stage 3, and you can see where we currently are, we are at the very, very beginning of stage 3. Stage 3 is the actual design of the 2 buildings. You can see that there are 3 checkpoints, and I'll get into those a little bit detail on the next slide. Oh, sorry, if we could go back. Sorry. There are 3 checkpoints that we must go through with RIDE SBA, but more importantly, there's 3 checkpoints that we have to go through with the school building committee as well as the school committee for this project to move forward. We cannot move to the next stage until we have approval from both of these bodies. These bodies represent you as constituents, so that's how we move forward with the project. As you can see, stage 4 is construction. We'll get into the project schedule in a little bit. And then, of course, we have project completion, which is when reimbursement takes place. Next slide, please. So, the 3 checkpoints of this phase that we're in right now: schematic design, design development, and construction documentation. When Sean gave his introduction today, he talked about how the design will change. It is inevitable that the design will change. And the reason for that being is that each one of these checkpoints, we reassess the project, we get independent cost estimates from third parties, we get cost estimates from our construction manager, we reconcile those estimates, we see where we currently are on budget, and we adjust the project to make sure that we stay on budget. At each one of these presentations, as I said, it's a checkpoint in design, approval, and we plan on having a public presentation like we're doing here tonight to get your feedback. This allows us to pivot where needed, to hear what your concerns are, and see how we can address them in the project if we're able to. As I said, we have independent and internal cost estimation, scope and budget alignment, and it's the opportunity for us to pivot in the design. So what you are seeing here today, while the educational programming spaces most likely will not change, in fact, they shouldn't change, what you might see is things like colors change, or you might see the locations of certain areas change, even the addition or the deletion of scope, and I'll get into that when we talk about contingency here in a second. So next slide, please. So, again, if we do not follow this process, we will not qualify for reimbursement from the state. And this process has been set up by RIDE to be very complicated and for multiple checkpoints, not just by the school committee. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Before you continue on the prior content there, just so that way we can keep up,
Yeah.
are there any questions or comments from members of the committee on the process thus far? Great, thank you.
And please stop me if I have a habit of using acronyms too. So if I'm saying something that is not easily understandable, just please let me know. So again, by the way, it is so hard to find a laser pointer these days. I had to go to a pet store to find a laser pointer. So if we do not follow the RIDE process, we will not qualify for reimbursement from the state of Rhode Island. However, that being said, not all of our project costs are reimbursable. This quote right here is taken directly from the RIDE regulations. I'll give everyone a chance to read it. But essentially what it states is that expenses for operations and routine maintenance, as well as selected athletic items, are generally not reimbursable. So examples for routine operations and maintenance. Some of these are a little bit counterintuitive, right? Why are security cameras not covered as part of RIDE's reimbursement? They consider those to be an operation and maintenance expense, so it's not reimbursable. Field lighting, irrigation, software programs and licenses. There are a lot of software programs that go into modern schools when you talk about 21st century state-of-the-art mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. Talk about our HVAC systems, our commissioning. And then selected athletic expenses. They are approved on a case-by-case basis, but generally field houses and all that field houses generally contain. Swimming pools, concession stands, these type of items are generally ineligible for reimbursement. So I'll stop there. Are there any questions on generally ineligibility and eligibility for reimbursement?
Any questions from members of the committee? All set.
Great. Okay, next slide, please. So let's take a look at our budget. As was quoted by the Warwick Beacon, and you guys heard me say at previous meetings, for those of you that attended, our hard cost budget, which means this is our design budget, is $280 million, or 80% of the project. Outside of the design budget, and this will change, we'll get to that in a second, outside of the design budget of $280 million, or $140 million for each school, we have soft costs. These include the architect, the engineering, project management, furnitures, fixtures, equipment, commissioning. These are all things that are not included in our hard cost. We budgeted them at 12%. It's important to note that 12% is below industry average. Industry average is 20% for a project. In fact, it's written in RIDE's regulations that generally your soft cost should be about under 20%. We are at 12%. But more importantly, contingency. We have $28 million in contingency. By the end of this project, if we are going to, and this is where the scope conversation comes in, which we're going to get to in a minute, this $28 million most likely will be shifted up here. This is going to cover things that we don't plan, we can't 100% plan for, such as ledge, right? There's a lot of rocky soils around here. We would have to drill to get through rocky soils. It also covers things like contaminated soils. How many of you have heard about what happened in Newport? A couple people? Well, we're going to get into that in a second too, but that's a good example of why we hold this contingency. So next, I'm going to stop here. This might be another spot where you guys have some questions.
Any questions from members of the committee? I have just one.
Yeah.
On soft costs,
Sure.
outdoor expenses to include but not limited to athletic facilities and parking. Would that fall under the soft costs or
No.
those hard costs?
No, soft costs are those, sorry, excuse me, athletic facilities and parking, those types of things, they're in your hard costs. But more importantly, they're also in our contingency, and I'll get to that in a second.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Thank you.
So our goal at this phase of the project, at this schematic design phase, is to figure out a project that is $140 million for each school that preserves this contingency. Next slide, please. So, what is contingency used for? It's an exercise in risk management. So contingency is used to protect the project from cost overruns. Contingency is always the largest at the beginning of the project, where we are now. And as we move through the project and we get past certain risks, such as soils, ledge, these type of items, we slowly can release contingency back into the project. At this phase, it is important for us to identify scope that we can easily add back into the project, right? So things like athletic lighting, some site work, finishes. It's very easy for us to change epoxy floor to tile later on in the project with contingency. It's much more difficult for us to change elements of the project that cannot change, such as MEP systems. We cannot go back a year after we started construction and change the mechanical, electrical, MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing system. We can also not add in additional classrooms. We've already got our steel up, right? So generally things like the building structure, the size of the building, these are all things that we need to plan, especially for now in SD, but as we're changing the program, as we move forward, we can add contingency for these other items that I talked about, finishes, some site work, landscaping. At this point in the project, we need to safeguard our contingency because it does open up this project to significant financial risk and the associated consequences, being over budget and being in a place where you can't change the scope of work, right? Or wholesale scope reduction. That's even worse. That's when we, at the end of a project, we need to find money, and so we're just cutting off whatever we can. Whatever's not been built yet, we're just cutting it out. That's what contingency protects against. Here's an example, is Newport. So Newport was a project it was well planned, it was well designed, just like all projects are. But things happen in construction. There are a lot of unknowns that we have to deal with and plan with. And in this case, they ran into unsuitable soils. $4.1 million worth of unsuitable soils. That is a large amount of money on a $120 million project, right? They had to, because they were already in the ground, they already had their steel up, their foundations were set, the outline of their house was already built. They did not have the money in their budget to deal with those unsuitable soils. So they had to pivot on the fly. And what that required was either going back out for more money, I've seen articles, City Council was debating kicking in more money, or a scope reduction after they were already in the ground. That is what I'm trying to avoid here by saving $28 million of our project and releasing it later on in the project. So once I get past my foundations, once I get past my steel, I no longer have to worry about contaminated soils. I no longer have to worry about rock that I'm going to drill into, right? that's when I can start releasing this contingency back into the project. And we can add additional scope into the project. So that's what we're trying to do, is show you guys tonight a presentation that hits that 140-degree design budget number. And as we move forward through the project, we have $28 million worth of contingency that, if not used for unknowns, we can add back into the project. I think that is something that I want to be absolutely clear on. So is there any questions about how contingency is used, what it's used for, the importance of contingency?
Any questions from members of the Committee on Contingencies? Mr. Testa.
Yeah, thank you. So, Mr. Spiegel, so you could conceivably have something that you may have to remove from the project, and you make it what you guys call an add alternative. Right?
So
you
that's-
develop a list, and depending on contingency, that list ends up getting prioritized, and then, to your point, if contingency isn't used in any significant way on soils and ledge, then you can put those things back in.
So that's
the
a
point
that-
is, if something is not in, doesn't necessarily mean it's never in.
So that's a great point. The design I'm going to show you today has over 25 add alternates, which are not included in the design yet, but we have pricing for them already at this point because we know that they're important. They are needs, or not, they are wants, not necessarily needs, and we can add them back into the project as the project moves forward. So thank you for reminding me. We look ahead. We try to plan as much as we can so that we have those items. We can prioritize them. We'll show you guys a list. When I did another project, we literally had an a la carte menu. You know, when you go to a restaurant, you know, if I want this steak, it costs $100. If I want this steak, it costs $40. This steak, $20. We'll present that to the school building committee and the school committee, and they'll be making decisions on how to use our contingency.
Do you yield? You're all set. Any other comments from members of the committee on contingency? Nope. Okay. We're all set.
Great. Next slide, please. So let's talk about our milestone schedule. Design for Stage 3 started in March of 2024. It will continue until March of 2025. Building construction, March of 2025 through June of 2027. We're trying to allocate at least 2 months for this building to be, what is industry term, it's called punched out, meaning that all the last little things that you need, screw in light bulbs, make sure that you got your HVAC filters, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning filters. All this happens, but more importantly, so the teachers have 2 months to be able to move into their new school. We've got a lot of moving that needs to happen. We're getting all new furniture, or a lot of new furniture for this school. So we want to give everybody as much time as possible to move into the building. Demolition of the existing buildings will take place in June and December of 2027. June through December, excuse me, and then complete all the site work, the remaining field work, that kind of thing, in August of 2028. As you can see, from the move-in to the new building to when the site work starts, the demolition is over in December of 2027. We have from August to December to finalize any additional contingency for the site work. That's when all your athletic fields are getting built. So whatever contingency we have left will be a discussion amongst the SBC and the school committee after they listen to their constituents about what we want to add back into the project. Are there any questions, Sean, David, Superintendent?
Members of the committee, any questions on the timeline? Seeing none. All set.
Great. Next slide, please. So, you've heard enough of me tonight, and I'm looking forward to stepping out of the spotlight for a few seconds. I'd like to introduce our first architecture team to present tonight. They are for the Pilgrim School. SOM Architecture, it's led by Katie and Ed. Katie and Ed, do you guys want to come up? Or just Kate? Oh, right there. You need this?
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. My name's Katie Kernizan. I'm with SOM Architecture. I'm the project architect for the Pilgrim Comprehensive High School. We'll jump right in. Okay, so here's a little content. We will be looking at the planning evolution, so from stage 1 to where we are today. Look at some 3D diagrams and user feedback based on talking with the school. Some 3D views, the site plan, and then we'll do a virtual animation. So take a walk through the school on any given day. Okay, so this is the visioning adjacency diagram. This was, as Mr. Spiegel was talking about, the early stages, ride stages of the project. We attended visioning sessions, and this diagram was developed specifically a visioning adjacency diagram. This was approved by the district, and the fundamentals of this diagram basically represent 21st century learning. So the district agreed that they wanted the schools to represent 21st century learning, and by doing so, creating these thematic small learning communities. And so you can see these sort of clusters of classrooms that are cross-curricular. So those include CTC, science, core classrooms, special education, collaboration spaces, teacher planning spaces, et cetera. And those not only sort of create diversity of learning and expose different learning types, it also breaks down the large enrollment number for the school of 1147 at Pilgrim. A couple other things to note within this diagram is the idea of creating a central media center, learning commons, which is basically at the library, and then having this community hub, a central community hub, which could contain the dining commons, as well as an auditorium that's front-facing, close to the street, as well as adjacent to the entry, and the gymnasium being kind of clustered with those public programs with close proximity to the sports fields. Next slide. From there, stage 2, we developed this model school concept diagram, and this was approved by RIDE. So this kind of brings it closer into an actual floor plan visual. Again, a diagram representing the different programs within the building, so different types of learning, common spaces, et cetera. And you can see how those small learning communities have evolved into 3 learning wings on the east side, the right here, and then 1 on the west side, which contains some high bay spaces. So that's why this one's positioned where it is. Through the center of the building, you can see this central spine. So in looking at that hub space, we developed this central spine to collect some of the program and also organize circulation. It also organizes these small learning communities to the east from the more public programs, the gym and the auditorium to the west. And then it contains the dining and learning commons. You'll see some of these hatched sort of bubbles throughout, and those represent vertical transparency throughout the plan, which you'll see in the floor plan in a second. So a strong notion in 21st century learning in our design is that there is both vertical and horizontal transparency, which promotes, exposure to different learning types, learning styles, as well as creating safety and security within the school. If you have a clearer line of sight, you're able to see kind of what's going on throughout the school. Administrative spaces can clearly see what's happening in some of the common spaces or the academic spaces. And lastly, I'll just point out that there are these outdoor learning courtyards carved out of the space between the learning wings. Next slide. You give it 1 or 5 seconds to load. There's a lot of information on these. So this is where we are today, and this is stage 3 schematic design. So this is following those estimates that we had done during schematic design, the reconciliation and the responses from those. So basically incorporating any value management that came from those. So what you see here is what you're gonna see in those 3D views in a minute. So it's a 2-story, Pilgrim High School is a 2-story building. You can see through the evolution from those diagrams that we still have that central spine organizing the spaces. The dark yellow is the dining commons, the light yellow is the learning commons, and I have some views of those as well. And then you can see these clusters of classrooms that kind of wrap the perimeter of each of these learning wings. And you can also see that they're very repetitive in nature, and so one of the key sort of design principles for that is to reduce cost by basically repeating the wings 3 times. Repeating the structural systems, repeating the building systems. And then you can see that the auditorium was placed towards the front of the building. This is creating sort of a strong massing on the front of the building, adjacent to Pilgrim Parkway and adjacent to the public entrance here on the south side. There's another entrance here on the north side, and I'll show you that clearer on a site plan. And then I'll just point out one of the requests of the auditorium was to not only kind of locate the building with this strong massing on the front, but also create this identity for the school. So we can take a look on the outside in a minute. And then lastly, the gymnasium is in purple. That program is gymnasium, and that is centrally located on axis with the spine adjacent to the sports fields, which you'll see on the site plan. You can go to level 2. On level 2, you'll see in a second that the learning wings are repetitive, as I'd mentioned. We worked closely with the users to sort of identify each one of these while still maintaining that repetition. There's some gym program on level 2 as well. So in part of the planning process was about bringing equity to all the students. So whether they're primarily attending classes on level 1 or level 2, they still all have access either physically or visually to all the other programs in the school. So moving some of the gym and PE programs upstairs with the weight, fitness, dance, aerobics that overlooks the larger gymnasium brings access to that program on level 2. Similarly, the auditorium, you can see that it actually the seating steps up to level 2. So again, having a direct access from level 2 to the program of the auditorium that's primarily on the first floor. And then you can see, last comment is that the X's represent those vertical connections, so visual as well as physical connections between the 2 floors, group the cohorts and the program throughout the school. So these are a series of, these next few slides are a series of user feedback and diagrams that represent that. So when we met with the school and the users, the different departments, the administration, we presented older versions of these, and these are kind of what has evolved that you saw on the floor plan. So on the right here, just to orient you, we have on the left here, we have some of the comments that came out of those meetings, an axonometric drawing that starts to visualize that, as well as a section, and on each of these next few slides, you'll kind of see some of that repeating. So a few important items that came out of these meetings were providing flexible classrooms and extended learning areas for collaboration, integrating teacher planning within the small learning communities, as well as maximizing daylighting and views to the outside. So you can see that the classrooms wrap the perimeter of those small learning communities, of those learning wings, and these learning wings are oriented in the north-south direction, so that's the optimal position or orientation of a building for natural daylighting for learning. And then we have some program in the core. Most of it is utilitarian, like toilets, et cetera, mechanical spaces towards the super core, but there are teacher planning as well as some collaboration flexible spaces. And the way that we provide natural daylighting and equity to those is kind of opening up these double height spaces, as I'd mentioned before, with that visual and physical connection between the 2 floors, providing daylighting into the core space. Next slide. This is an example of the workshop wing, so you can see kind of a typical workshop space, and some of the comments that came out of those meetings were having adjacent workshop demonstration spaces to instructional spaces. So this is more of a classroom setup, this is more of an open workshop, and there's a visual connection between the 2. Having some dedicated CTC lockers, so those kind of line the corridors in this wing, and then maximizing daylighting views and having shop access to the exterior. So you can see in these spaces, those are located on the first floor with overhead doors to the outside, which provide laid out on the exterior as well. Next slide. Looking at the auditorium music drama program, some of the items that came out of that were, again, going back to visioning this idea of having a statement or something very proud on the outside of the school. So that's why it is positioned where it is. The auditorium's positioned where it is. You can see the connection to level 2 with the step seating. There was a desire to have the music classes. separately zoned to isolate the noise, but also have them close to the other programs. So that's why we located them sort of off of the commons and more internal to the building. And then you can see that we've created some natural daylighting within those spaces to maximize the use of the wall space for equipment, instruments, acoustical treatment, et cetera. Yep, next slide. And then this next one is about the learning and dining commons. So going back to that central spine that runs through the center of the building, you can see the dining and learning commons here. One of the sort of key logistical comments that came out of our user group meetings was the idea of having a place for students to come who come earlier than the teachers upon arrival. And so this space is zoned in such a way that the rest of the school can be closed off, and basically the students can hang out in here until the rest of the teachers arrive and the day begins. There was also a desire for sensory sensitive and outdoor dining, so we have a directly adjacent courtyard, outdoor dining courtyard, as well as some strategically placed sensory sensitive dining locations. And then for the learning commons, there was a desire to create something very dynamic and enticing for students kind of walking by and looking into this space. So along with providing the correct linear footage of book stacks that the librarian gave us, there's also forward-facing stacks that kind of advertise the books to the passerbys to kind of entice people to come in. And then there was also the desire to have the library be a social space and also have heads down space. So there's some, more quiet spaces tucked away. One item that came out of that was often injured students who aren't able to attend PE during the day often come to the learning commons and hang out for the period and study. So that was part of that thinking.
Katie, before you
Yes.
continue
Sorry.
on,
Yep.
I'm going to take a page out of Mr. Tess's book. For the public's edification, the schematic designs that are being presented before you this evening came before the school committee at our meeting last Tuesday. So we had to approve these so that way they could go back to RIDE on the general educational programming and design of the building. So this has already come before the school committee. I would refer you back to Mr. Spiegel with Left Field's presentation of where in the process our vote on that design came, where it's going to go to next. So just letting everyone know that this Pilgrim has come before us. Tollgate is not yet come before us, and we'll see that for the first time tonight with all of you. But Katie, one question for you.
Mm-hmm.
The outdoor courtyards that you referenced here, and I wish I brought this up last Tuesday. Pilgrim currently features outdoor courtyards. They're not well kept because they're not easily accessible for outdoor equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Have we considered that with the design of the outdoor courtyards?
Yes, we've had lengthy conversations about that, and actually these courtyards are not totally enclosed. They're open on the right side, so there's easy access in and out.
Thank you.
Yep, for equipment
Any
and
other
whatnot.
questions or comments from members of the committee on this? Quinn, anything? All right, we're good. Sorry, Kate.
No worries, and I just wanted to point out, as I'm taking a breath here, that when I described the value management process, I just want to highlight the fact that none of the educational program was eliminated during that process. That has all been maintained in this design as you see it today. So just wanted to mention that. Next slide. The gymnasium, you can see there was the desire for a connection from the commons. You can see that on-access connection from the commons, and then a connection to the greater sports fields beyond. And this is that level 2 program, so there was discussion about, having a wow feature without spending a ton of money, and so we moved the fitness, dance, aerobic weight room up here, and this not only connects that program to level 2, but it also creates this dynamic connection within the gym itself. The gym is flanked by athletic and PE lockers on either side. Those are also sort of lined with athletic and PE staff offices. So there's sort of eyes to the corridor on both sides. Similarly, that happens within the commons. There's administrative spaces that overlook the commons and also act as a checkpoint into those small learning communities. And then one other thing I'll note about the gymnasium is, as Mr. Chairman mentioned about the walking track, we heard that that was a desired feature, and through some creative planning and design, we actually located it at level 1 and planned it in such a way that we could keep that demarcated flooring for a walking track, curve the walls, and include that in the latest. So these are some 3D views you can see. We'll run through them quickly. So here's the dining and learning commons. The dining is to the left here. You can see a view from the inside looking out to the outdoor courtyard, from the outdoor courtyard looking in. The learning commons with those forward-facing book stacks looking out to the courtyard and to level 2. You can see the visual connection from level 2 to the learning commons and that administrative overlook of the administrative spaces that line the commons. Next slide. Gymnasium and auditorium. So we have the gymnasium from outside and inside overlooking the sports fields beyond on the left and the auditorium on the right here. The learning wings and outdoor learning courtyard. So this is an example of a lab classroom with a visual connection to the commons. And this is that double height space at the end of each of the small learning communities, kind of joining those cohorts from level 1 to level 2, providing daylighting. And then these are those 2 outdoor learning courtyards. So they're open to where, I guess, our backs would be if you were standing in these images. And these are meant to also provide outdoor program for the program that's happening within the learning wings. So a science classroom could partake in a lesson about garden and growing, or the CTC early childhood education could be using this playground in the courtyard on the south side. 2 exterior views. So this is the northern side. So this is the side that I'll show you on a site plan in a second that students getting off the bus would come in. This is the entrance where the high bay wing projects to the right here, and you can see those overhead doors spilling out the program there. Next slide. And then this is the sort of main Pilgrim Parkway public entrance. This is the learning community to the right here, the auditorium to the left, creating that identity, that marker on the site. And the idea for the column work here was to not only provide an overhang and an entrance to the school, but also sort of identify it as a civic building and create a threshold kind of coming into the entrance there, the main public entrance. The site plan, so you can see in this brown dash, this is the existing school that would be demolished once the new school here in white is built. So this would remain in operation while this is being built, and then the fields would come after that. So you can see the outline of the new school here with those courtyards that are open on the ends. The teal is the car queuing and the car circulation. So what would happen is, to avoid sort of traffic on this side coming from this intersection, the main entrance to the site would occur here. The car drop-off would loop around and drop off at the front. The yellow represents the bus drop-off, so those are queued here on the north side and then come back out. On access from the gymnasium is the stadium. So this is the primary sports stadium with the grandstands and the field events surrounding it, as well as the practice field, new practice fields, baseball field, softball field, and tennis courts. And then this building here is the existing annex building at Pilgrim High School, which is being renovated to accommodate the concessions, toilet rooms, locker rooms for the outdoors. There's parking along the south and the north.
Katie, before you
Yes.
proceed, any questions, comments from members of the committee before we do a virtual walkthrough? Just have a couple myself. Estimated square footage based on the design for the public?
204, so 204,172 for the building. Sorry if I heard you wrong.
For the building?
For the building.
Okay. And I don't know if this is a question for you or Mr. Spiegel. Estimated cost as of today, August 21st, cost per square foot.
Approximately $700 a square foot, 700 to 705 a square foot.
Thank you. And then, for the public's knowledge, I did, at the prior meeting, go on the record in stating that I think the parking is a little limited. The size of the gymnasium is not large enough, and that we require additional fixed seating. So that's where I stand on this. Any other comments from members of the committee on Pilgrim here? Mr. Tessa.
Thank you. Katie, to the east of the baseball field, all that grassed area, that's just open space, right?
Correct.
As is the space just south of the annex building, right?
Correct.
Okay, and that's all Pilgrim property, okay, yep.
Correct, on the south,
Yeah.
yes.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify on the gymnasium,
Yes.
the issue with the gymnasium is the number of I was going to say it in a way I shouldn't say it. Just the number of seats, the number of grandstand seats, right?
No, it's both size because it's an educational space and fixed seats to accommodate if they wanted to get all students in there at one time. Yes, of course, your occupancy of that space will be much greater if you bring in temporary seating, and you could use the center of the gymnasium for that temporary seating. However, if you go to Pilgrim and attend one of their unified basketball games or I forget, it escapes me right now, pep rallies, where there's a need to have the court clear and students on the bleachers, 750 wouldn't match our current student population.
Right, and okay, I get that, but typically, anyone from Pilgrim can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, tradition is on pep rallies, freshmen sit on the floor. That's always been like the freshman rite of passage, but.
No, it's full school.
So, but either way, so I mean, that's, I hear you, and in fact, they can do that, they do that, so I don't have an issue with that.
Thank you. Do you yield? Any other comments, questions from members of the committee? Ms. Hazelwood.
I know right now at Pilgrim, when they have to have a full school assembly, they've often had to have it in the fields. We don't have the space for it. Actually, you could have a full school assembly here at Vets in that auditorium. That can fit this school, it could fit a high school plus. At Pilgrim now, we don't have it, and at 750, that's even less. So that just wouldn't be sufficient.
Thank you, Ms. Hazelwood. Do you yield? Thank you. Any other comments? I would add, I'll say this till I'm blue in the face, and we got the pre-read on Tollgate, and my comments will remain the same. Education first and foremost. That is an educational space, the gymnasium, and we live in New England. We have more poorer weather months than we have better months, and Pilgrim currently has 2 gymnasiums, just like Tollgate, and we're going down to 1. I know we're adding in some additional physical activity learning spaces, but I just feel it's not practical, the current size of that gymnasium. And before we start putting up steel and and getting to the point where we can't expand, I just want to make sure it's very clear that as we continue to move forward and progress, everybody knows where I stand, so that way when I have to draw that hard line in the stand and say I vote no, it's because I'm being open and honest up front that space needs to be much larger. Any other comments, statements? Ms. Backus.
I just want to say that I concur with you, Mr. Galligan, and I think most of us feel the same way. The gyms need to be much larger. They are where generally pep rallies and things like that are held. We can't have them outside in the middle of winter, and so 750 is not going to cut it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ms. Kirby-Jeff.
Was the walking track a factor on making it smaller?
No, there's that circulation that's required anyway, so it was basically a creative solution that came out of that. And I will just note, as an assembly space, according to the code analysis, it does serve 1,300. So while the bleachers may not fulfill that number as a space itself.
No, I appreciate that clarification, and I'm separating occupancy
Mhm.
from what you need to use it for, right? And so,
Yep, understood.
you know, I attended an event at Pilgrim earlier this year, a full school event, and there were students on the baselines, and I don't think from a crowd control management perspective it would have been apropos. So I'll leave it at that without saying too much more. But any other comments? Seeing none, please continue.
All right, awesome. So we're going to jump to the animation. So there was some music, but I don't know that it, oh! Take that back. I will note that you may see a very neutral color palette. Since we're only in schematic design, we're entering design development, which is when we meet again with the users, the district, to discuss colors, materials related to finishes, and we'll get into sort of animating the display walls and the wayfinding, et cetera. So that'll all kind of come to life as we keep designing. As designers, we also believe that the furniture and the people bring the liveliness and the kind of depth to the design, and so we kind of want that to also stand out against slightly neutral backdrop. But we'll definitely be highlighting and working with the district to highlight the Pilgrim school colors and spirit. Thank you.
Based on that video, any comments, questions, concerns, funny jokes? I've got one. It might be a stupid question. We're not changing the name of the school to Pilgrim Comprehensive High School, are we? Is that just
It's not my decision.
All right, good. For later discussions. then.
It is a comprehensive school with the CTC integrated, but yeah.
Great. All right. Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Son Architecture. Again, Chairman Galligan, this is one of those quirks. We're calling it comprehensive high school because comprehensive high schools get higher reimbursement. So,
If you change the name of the school, it would eliminate one of my jokes.
all right, I'll keep it then.
Okay, thank you.
So before I introduce Secotio and Associates and their team there, I did just want to mention that the level of finishes in the buildings are going to be the same. One of the first things we had to do in March when we brought on board, we brought the construction manager on board, was we had to take a significant pivot on the design of Tollgate. That's because of the site. Everyone who's been to Tollgate knows that it's up and down. We also discovered wetlands that were previously unidentified on that site. So all of these things required a pretty significant pivot in order to make the design come onto budget. So having said that, what we're going to be showing you from tonight from Secotio and Associates may not be as polished as because they've had to substantially redo their work. So it's not as polished, but the level of finishes and more importantly, the thoughtfulness that has gone on to this presentation is going to be apparent in Tollgate too. We're just not ready yet. We look forward to showing you all that at our next public meeting when we bring in the design development and we pivot again to the changes that we're being asked to make in between now and our next thing. So having said that, I'd like to introduce Secotio and Associates. They're going to walk you guys through the new Tollgate High School. Sure.
Mr. Spiegel, before you step away, Mr. Tessa has one question.
Yeah, I have one question, and you can confirm this. The building of, the Pilgrim building was actually moved from its original placement. It's moved a little further south, away from the abutters, and a little further east to accommodate the underlying, the underground utility feeds, right?
So you are correct. One of the things that we do when we first come on board is we look for substantial ways to reduce the cost of the project without reducing program. Things that you pay a lot of money for that you don't see, the biggest one is your site work. No one is going to see the amount of tons and tons and tons of dirt that you move around a site in order to make way for your foundations and in order to make sure that you're building on stable soil. So one of the first things that we do is with Dimeo, of course, is perform what's called a cut-fill analysis, where you look at the site and you say, if I was to build the building here, how much would it cost me in terms of how much fill or soil I would have to bring in, or how much soil I would have to take out. And you move the building around, even sometimes just a few feet makes a huge difference in the amount of, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's millions of dollars that you save. The other thing I also wanted to say in terms of finishes is that we're being very thoughtful and that the finishes that we choose for one school are the same finishes that we choose for the other school. That makes maintenance a lot easier. Now you're not running around for 2 different types of light fixtures, 2 different types of light bulbs, 2 different types of carpet tile, 2 different types of flooring. It makes operations and maintenance much, much cheaper. And you also get the advantage of us of buying in bulk. When we go to Costco and we buy 10 things of macaroni and cheese, they cost $1 a piece. But if I was to go to Shaw's, it cost me $1.35 each, which is ridiculous for Kraft macaroni and cheese, but that's what it is. So we're taking that same philosophy into this building. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Without further ado, Steve Guglielmo from Secotio and Associates Architects. Do you want me to point for you, or you want to point? Oh, you got a real one. He's got a lightsaber.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So we're going to be presenting Tollgate. We're going to start with the slide of the visioning. We're going to go through visioning and then get into a site plan and then into the building. Kind of do it a little backwards from Pilgrim. Just to reiterate what Katie showed with this visioning diagram, just to let everyone know, both schools started with this visioning adjacency diagram. This was done back in 2001 to come up with the layout and the adjacencies for the school. So both schools actually followed this particular program with the small learning communities, the central spaces, the media center, auditorium, gymnasium, adjacencies, and program was followed for both schools. You also heard the term model school earlier. Back in 2021-22, we had come up with a model school that was going to be built on both sites. Since then, the tollgate site, as you know, is very hilly. It's got a lot of ledge. We found wetlands, as Chris alluded to. So there will be some similarities to the buildings, but they're not going to be identical as the model school we were proposing originally. You notice that Pilgrim School has 3 two-story classroom wings, where the Tollgate School will have 2 three-story classroom wings. And that was to eliminate a lot of the excavation where there was a lot of ledge and rock, just to save some cost on the project. So with that, I can get into the site plan. Next slide, please. This is the site plan for Tollgate. So there's quite a bit of difference in elevation here, the topography here, between the lower part of the site and the upper part of the site. It's probably about 30 feet, 35 feet in difference in height. But starting from the entry to the site, coming in from 117, coming up this road, this is an existing road that we're maintaining. We're going to retain it. Also, this road that goes around and comes up between the 2 buildings here, we're going to retain that road. You can see the black outlines here. That's the existing building. That's going to remain while we build the new school. So when you come up this road, you're going to come past the existing Career Tech building. You're going to continue up. This is the Drum Rock School that's going to be raised. So we're going to come up around the back of the site. This is the main parking lot for teachers and visitors. Within that parking lot, this area here in the center is where we found wetlands. So that's why the parking lot takes this kind of shape around it. The parent drop-off lane is here. The bus loop would come around the back of the lot and come here. This is the bus loop pickup and drop-off area, and they'd come back out right down this road, back out to 117. The main entrance to the school is here. We have a secondary entrance at the lower level, because this is on a hill here. The lower level here is a secondary entrance and exit, where we're going to use this existing road that right now separates the high school from the CTC building. We're going to maintain that road as another bus pickup and drop-off area, so the students can use this entrance and exit, and also use it to access the CTC building across the street.
Steve, can I get you to stop one second?
Sure.
Sean, could you turn up the volume of the microphone of the speaker? Those viewing at home are having a difficult time hearing it. Thank you.
Okay, better? So, again, this road here is retained for another bus drop-off and pickup area. This area of the school is an entrance and exit. Students can access the CTC building across the road from the main building. There are several programs that we're retaining in the CTC building, and we'll get into that when we get into the building plans after the site review. So up in the back here, there'll be also a parking lot here that's going to be used also for the football stadium. Back around the north and east side of the football stadium will be the field events, okay, the hammer throw, the javelin, all those events are back here. We have an additional practice field going in here. We have a secondary parking lot on the west side of the building. this wing here will house the special education, administration, and nursing area. So we have the mini buses that would line up in this parking lot and use this side entrance for special education entry and exit. This parking lot is 60 parking spaces. The one back here is 174. You can see up here the total parking in the whole site is 430. Bus parking, we have, we're showing 33 standard buses and 14 mini buses right now, and that counts the buses on this road and the buses back here in this main loop back here. Across from the school, down the lower level, we have another parking lot here that are going to be used for the students. As you know, right now, this parking lot stretches all the way back to this back part of the site here. We're going to cut it back, and this is obviously where we're putting the softball and the baseball fields. They're both going to have bleachers, concessions. There's a concession and toilet building going in here for both, to use for both fields. So, and there's also press boxes for both going in this site. So from this, we're going to go to an animation.
Before you jump into the animation, any
Yep.
questions or comments from members of the committee?
I
Ms.
just have a
Hazelwood.
question. When you reference special education going in a certain entrance, is this for transition program? Are you speaking about the 18 to 22-year-old student?
No, the transitional program is not at this
So it's not going to be
location.
here at all?
No.
And are you saying they're housed in that area of the building?
Yeah, we're going to show you on the plan, but the main special education spaces are in this wing here.
So I just want to make sure this isn't going to be segregating special ed students.
No, this is actually from the visioning and from the meetings with the special education department, that they chose to be near the administration and near the nurses' suite and have their own entrance and exit from the building.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's take
Thank
a
you.
look.
Any other comments? Mr. Testa.
Thank you. Mr. Guglielmo, I know you said at the beginning that initially there were two model schools that mirrored each other. And because it wasn't just site considerations, it was also Department of Ed, right? Because the original plan where we were going to site the building, they had approved it first, and then they said, no, it's too far away. It should be more adjacent to career and tech. So that necessitated moving it further, whatever direction that is.
Yes, actually,
Or west, rather.
we originally had the building a little further back here, but when we proposed to use this CTC building to house the existing large, expensive spaces like the culinary arts, we have a restaurant there, the automotive is down there, rather than building those new, they're very expensive spaces, we proposed to the Department of Education that we retain that building and keep them in that building. So they said the only way we can do that is to bring our main building close enough to that building. So that's when we brought the building from back here, we brought it closer, we used the hill here to set this wing lower. So now we're easy access right from the lower level, out this doorway, down this walkway, right across the street to the CTC building. We presented that to the Department of Education and they approved it. Okay.
Anyone else? I would just comment, first and foremost, I commend you. That's a very difficult parcel of land to figure out how you're going to construct a school of this size on it, as well as all the other outdoor complexes. So well done, especially with the the wetland area, how you creatively worked around that.
Yeah, that was a surprise to us to find that wetlands area in that location, so. Yeah.
And it looks beautiful how you laid it out. I have a couple questions and statements. Obviously, Tollgate having more students there than Pilgrim, because you also have the CTC students. I'd go on the record again with the parking being insufficient or inadequate. I think that number has to go up because you're going to have a larger volume of faculty and staff there, because you have a majority of the CTC programs there, and then more students attending that school. So that would be my first statement. For the public's knowledge, Mr. Spiegel touched on it earlier regarding what is reimbursable and not reimbursable from RIDE, and I believe parking is one of those non-reimbursable costs, or it is reimbursable, but up to a certain amount. I'll let him touch on that, or he can speak to it now if you'd like.
Yeah, well, RIDE was pushing 300 to 350, but we know that we need more than that. So we've got 430 at this site.
Yeah, I'd love for RIDE to come down and say that to us when 50% or close to 50% of this project is funded by the taxpayers. So, you know, I can appreciate their sentiments, but we also fund their salaries. As far as you know, the restrooms, that's cool to see that because of the size of the campus here, you're going to have restrooms over near the baseball and softball fields. We have obviously the recurring expenditures of porta-johns or portable restrooms currently, and that's a recurring expense for us. But over near kind of the football and the multi-sport field, is there going to be anything over there, or are we looking at still having portable restroom units?
No, I neglected to explain that. We had a stadium building that was going in the back of the stands here.
Yeah.
But because of budget restraints, we're trying to, you know, do it as efficiently as we can, save costs. What we did was we encompassed that in the back of the building here. We have toilet rooms that are accessible from the exterior and a concession stand right in the back of the building here that is adjacent to the field.
Okay.
Okay.
So you lead me into a great discussion on reimbursement, actually. So originally there was a field house type item right next to the sports, which contained a concession stand, your restrooms and things like that. Non-reimbursable. But if we're able to build the bathrooms directly across inside the building, now all that becomes reimbursable because it's part of the space. So these are the types of arguments that we have back and forth with RIDE and the pivots that occur between each successive design. Parking is always going to be a fight with RIDE. It is, they do not want to pay for parking. It's not really up to them. As you said, though, taxpayers are paying 50% of this project. If you guys need parking, we will put in parking, but it's one of those things where at this stage at SD, we try to limit it, and then as you tell us, just like you just have, it's not enough, that's when we pivot and we go back and we say to RIDE, we showed this at a school committee meeting, they approved it at SD, but they said address the parking. So that's how that progress works on that item.
Thank you, and I appreciate you letting the public have a little bit more insight into, as much as we're trying to do, there's someone on the other side, because they're giving us a little bit of money, they're saying, hey, we get a say in
Not only that, and there's actually regulations about how big sizes can be based on your student count. I believe the gym at Tollgate is 1,000 square feet over what the regulation is. So we'd actually have to get a variance for that. These are examples of RIDE is paying for a significant portion of this project. They have construction regulations that we must follow. With that said, you know, we request variances, we make arguments, we give, we take. That's how this project comes together.
My last two questions. The tennis courts up in the northwest there, those are the current tennis courts of Windman, correct?
Yes.
Are they being refurbished, or are we reconstructing them to the full extent? Do we feel that reconstructing them is safe given their current, you know, state, and then, you know, kind of the back property there and
the plan is to refurbish those tennis courts, which means to take out the surfacing, put new surfacing in, new fencing, make it accessible for ADA. Right now, we're looking at having a study done by a geotech engineer to do some borings there to see what we would have to do to refurbish it, because it's on a slope in the back there. So we want to make sure.
It's currently a project risk.
Pardon me?
It's currently a project risk because we don't know.
We don't know yet.
At that point.
Yeah, we don't know, but we're pretty sure. We've had it looked at preliminarily, and they're telling us that it's feasible to do. So the school department's going to hire a firm to go out and do some borings just to confirm what we've already heard, that it's stable enough to resurface it and reuse those courts.
Okay. And my last question on this is a very large campus, and kind of somewhat resembles a college campus with how widespread it is. From a safety perspective, what are we doing throughout this entire property? So if phys ed is a mile away from the main structure up in the northwest, like kind of that little open field space there, what are we doing? Are we considering any safety features to where a faculty member can notify someone, or if a student or a resident is walking through this property in the evening and something happens, they're able to call for help?
Yeah, we actually have a security meeting scheduled for next week with the fire department, the police department, and our security consultants to go over all of that. We've gone through some of the building, and now we have to look at the site as a whole. But there will be fencing around the entire football stadium area, lighted parking lots, obviously, lighted walkways, but the next level is, cameras and security for the site.
So sorry to keep stealing Steve, but that's actually another great point that I'd like to make, is that it's not just RIDE that we have to build to suit. There's a checkpoint in each one of it's called authorities having jurisdiction. There are certain organizations that have jurisdiction over certain elements of this project. Fire, planning, police. These drawings have also have to be reviewed and approved by the Governor's Commission on Disabilities. So there are a lot of voices that we're all trying to, some people say that, good project management is not knowing how to play every instrument, but it's knowing what makes a good song, hearing a good song and knowing what that is. And that is our goal right now, is to get all of these competing interests and find a plan that works for everybody. So that's another example of, how we have to pivot based on what we hear back from other organizations that have jurisdiction, because the Governor's Commission on Disabilities can say, just to one of the council members' points, we don't like this, change, and we would have to pivot. They've got authority to do so.
Any other comments from members? Ms. Hazelwood.
Just one question. For both schools, how many students are expected to attend both schools? What is the capacity?
Well, right now, they're both being designed for about 1150 approximately.
Both schools?
Yeah, I think Pilgrim, is 1147, and I think Tollgate was 1145 or 44.
So, okay.
So they're both about the same.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome. So,
Anyone else?
okay, with that, I guess we can go to the site animation. It'll give you a better idea of the topography of the site and what we had to deal with to make this work. This is starting down at the softball field, coming up, looking at the back of the Career Tech building. You can see that the hill going up toward the high school. You can see the topography difference there. The south wing of the high school has a lower level. Even though they're both 3-story wings, the south wing has a lower level that houses some of the CTC programs and woodworking. You can see the parking lot here. That parking lot is going to be for deliveries of wood and metal for the welding, marine, and the woodworking tech program. The open area between the two classroom wings is going to have a greenhouse here for the science department. One of the science rooms are here. There's an art platform out here, and then there'll be outdoor seating for the cafeteria that's behind this glass wall. This is the side parking lot we talked about with the mini buses and the side entrance for special education. This would be the parent drop-off and pickup loop in front of the building. This is the front of the school administration along this lower level here. And as we come around, you see some of the parking lot and the bus loop that's completely separated from the parent drop-off and the main parking lot. So it doesn't interfere with any of the parent traffic or the traffic in the parking lot. And this is just a finishing shot of what you see from the field, looking back at the school and the stands of the stadium.
Any comments from members of the committee? Looks like the councilmen from wards 8 and 9 are pumping a lot of money onto the south side of the city. A blue track, Councilman Gebhardt, blue track.
So,
Ms. Backus.
On both buildings, it looks like you have flat roofs. Are those the rubber roofs?
it's not going to be a rubber roof. It's going to be a TPO roof, thermoplastic roofing. It's similar to a rubber roof, but it's going to be a monolithic membrane, white.
One of the problems that we've had with our rubber roofs in flat buildings is that kids have a tendency to send arrows up and different things like that, and it breaks the rubber and causes problems with leaks and things like that. So
Yeah.
will this be impervious to that kind of mischief?
Well,
So if someone shoots an arrow up on a roof, I hope that security catches it and punishes them. And I'm not joking here. I don't think.
I'm not joking either.
Yeah.
It actually happens.
Yeah. So
Pilgrim is a perfect
yeah.
example.
So you're going to be hard pressed to find any roofing product that would that. But you know, the TPO roof is industry standard right now for these projects. It's not the same type of roofs that were installed years ago on these projects. They're also substantially higher, and we have better security than we currently have right now. But I can't rule out that, if someone is tenacious enough, they could figure out a way to poke a hole in it. But hopefully our security cameras will. The alternative to a TPO roof is really I'm getting technical here, but a 2-ply bituminous asphalt roof. They're very, very expensive. This roof also comes with a substantial warranty. TPO roofs come with 20-year warranties right now. So that helps out a lot as well. So, that's a great point that I should mention, is that once this school was built, we have warranties on all of our products within the schools. And not just warranties, and then we also have, from the day that they build it to from the day we occupy it for a year out, we have what's called a workmanship guarantee by the contractor as well. And Left Field goes inside every building about 4 months before that warranty is up, and we check every single thing to make sure that you are getting the entire money's worth on that thing. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be pedantic, because I guess I have kids. I was in high school once. I can see that if someone really wanted to pinch that roof, they absolutely could. Yeah.
It's been a concern. That's why I bring it up.
No.
Also, with the plumbing, electrical, mechanics of the building,
Yeah.
Are they upgradable?
So the software systems that we put in are certainly upgradable, and the project is fully commissioned as well. With that being said, if you wanted to, you can replace boilers. Obviously, you can replace heating units and things like that. Rooftop units and things like that. But the actual infrastructure, the ducts, the wiring, that's very expensive, to replace. So we're buying you the best now. The best available now is what we're buying. We actually have our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineer here as well that can vouch for that we're buying you the best that we can right now.
But as you probably know, one of the problems with Pilgrim is that we just ran out of space and everything else to add on to the electrical and things like that. And that's a problem citywide.
Oh, you mean talking the size of the service, the electrical service?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the electrical service is appropriately sized for the school with some to spare. Yeah. The electrical service is set by Rhode Island Energy too. We can fight with them about certain things, but they're going to install what is the most efficient and cost effective for them.
Because when we're looking at like 50 years from now, and hopefully they'll last far longer than 50 years.
The buildings will, absolutely, yeah. I think there's going to be in 50 years, your electrical service, we'll see what maintenance it needs to be done. Hopefully I'm around. I just turned 40 on Monday, so maybe not, but, you know, might be a different school committee's problem.
I think so. Sean might still be.
No, absolutely not. Anything else?
He's
Ms.
young.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, yay.
Anything else, members of this committee? All right, if you guys would like to continue on.
Okay. Michael is going to now present the actual floor plans and the interior of the building.
So Pilgrim has, what we were mentioning before, 3 fingers that come out to it, and in our due diligence, we had to reduce it down to the 2. So we, as Steve was mentioning before, we have 2 basically wings that come out from the central core that have 3 stories each. So walking through the school itself, we also have the main corridor. This is the main entrance. Off of each of the main spines, so to speak, we have the corridors that go down into either the guidance and admin wing, special education, mainly the life skills department is at the end here. And each one of these wings that contains is the larger classrooms such as science and arts, and the core classrooms, which are about 850, so to speak, square feet each. These are all mirrored and are stacked on top of each other. So back to the main entrance, we come in, we have the auditorium off of the main spine. The gymnasium is also doing the same thing, very similar to Pilgrim. This is our dining commons, which is all open to the space of the main spine. The servery, if I get back to the gymnasium and fitness area, we have the main gymnasium, and off of that we have a wrestling room, dance and aerobics combined area, lockers that support not only the fitness but also the regular sports. As we were talking about before, outside here we have restrooms that serve the sports arena and a concessions stand that also supports that as attached to the main building. Going back to the main auditorium, we have the music area, band and chorus. This is another offshoot of the music department, and this is support areas for the auditorium itself. If
How
we
many,
go-
how many square feet? the total gate?
Total amount of square feet was?
The total building?
Yeah, 211? So 210, but that also includes the spaces that we needed to add onto this area for the concessions and for the restrooms that would normally be attached to the gym, to the arena area.
So
that's
210,000 square feet is the total square
correct.
footage for tollgate?
correct.
And total cost per square foot for tollgate at this moment?
Same same
Approximately
cost, 700. Yep.
Thank you. And anything else on this slide here from members of the committee?
Okay, so getting back to the whole gym areas, that I realized that the original gymnasiums for both schools have 2 gyms in them, but the idea is that we have a main central gym and then we have these off branches that you have a combined wrestling, dance, and aerobics area, and on the second floor you'll see that there's a fitness and weight room. So those kind of compensates for the 2 areas. If we go to the next slide. So this is the second level, and you can see that the educational community is mirrored onto each other, where again you have your core classrooms, science and art, and a main spine. This main spine looks down upon to the cafeteria area. As I mentioned before, this is the fitness and weight rooms, and these look also down upon to the gym area. Next. On the third floor, you see another community, the learning community, which mirrors the other ones. And if we go to one more slide, this is taking us down to the lowest level, as we know that because of topography, this is where we have the CTC. This is the marine trades and welding, and also the shop area, as well as support areas for that. Next. Into the existing CTC building, we have the existing culinary with the restaurant, and these are the upgraded spaces that we're upgrading. The electrical, carpentering, and existing automotive and their support spaces. Next. And on the floor above that, cosmetology, this is their existing space too, which is being upgraded. And the health occupations is now moving into this space, and that space would be also upgraded. Next. So these are some quick renderings of the exterior that you saw with the animation. Next. Another area that we're just refreshing your memory with, this is the lowest area that I was showing before. So there's 3 stories here and 3 stories here, and the existing CTC building. Next. And again, looking from the actual field up into the back of it. So we're just kind of giving you an idea of what it looks like in 3D. It's where we have the main spine and the support areas off of that. Learning communities, admin and guidance, the auditorium, and the music support areas behind that. Next. A little bit closer look at admin and the guidance suite. So when you come into the building, you have this lock where you have admin being able to look and control everyone that goes in and out of the building. And the spaces back in here, which is for life skills. We have behavioral sciences, and the reason that we kind of made their own entrances is because of some of the children having a small bus drop-off that is close to this entrance here. We also have the medical suite that's close to it, and all the support facilities within admin there. Next. A closer look at the auditorium, the stage, and shared spaces between band and chorus. And the support spaces here where you have another music classroom and all the support for the theater. Gymnasium again, all their supports in back of house. And what we did is a little bit different. We put the support spaces for the athletic director, the coaches, and the sports coaches and such to have eyes. We call it eyes on the streets, so they can actually look onto the basketball court and the gymnasium at all times, more for security. And we did do a track, so to speak, around the gymnasium and around the back hallways that we have circulation for. So we have kind of a support running track as well. Next. This is looking at the typical educational suite with the arts and sciences and the regular core academic classrooms in the back. Next. And then we're going to give a real quick walkthrough. Are there any questions so far before I do a quick walkthrough?
Any questions from members of the committee? Nothing on the blue trap? Seeing none? We're all set.
Okay. As everyone was saying before, Chris, our level of finishes are just catching up to Pilgrim. So this is a very, let's say, down and dirty look at a walkthrough of our spaces. So it's just to get an understanding of what the spaces kind of feel like. It's not as nice and polished or smooth, but at least it'll give us an understanding of how it looks. Yeah. So again, coming in through the front entrance, to the right you have your vestibule that admin looks at. To the right is also the media center, a closed area, so you're seeing the seating area where the stacks are in the classroom there. To the right-hand side, there are different classrooms that are open for either video recording. You have your school store there as well. So those are kind of like, this is your main boulevard. To the right is the openness of the That's dining commons, and that opens up into the view out into the main courtyard. Then we're going to see the learning stair. So this space is meant to be used not only as a dining commons, but off of the other hours that is not used as a dining commons. You can use it as any other space, including a lecture area for this learning stair. These windows look down onto the media center. Off to the right, you'll be able to look into what would be the fitness areas and the weight rooms, and those rooms look out onto the gym. To the right again, you're looking down upon that commons area for the cafeteria. Each wing has a teacher hub. So to the right, you're looking at a space where teachers are doing their work. They're also using that space as kind of having eyes on the street again, controlling who's going in and out of these different learning communities. And during off times, these wings can be closed off and locked. So if you're having any kind of event for the gym or auditorium or anything else that can be used, no one can be able to get into the spaces, the educational spaces. So we're just taking a quick trip down to the next level underneath it, and we'll tuck into one of the classrooms to take a quick look. You can also see to the right these breakout areas. Those are meant to be very flexible for resource uses in small groups. This is looking into one of the labs. All of the furniture is meant to be flexible, except for, of course, the built-in casework. And that's indicative of all the classrooms, whether it's a core classroom or whether it's an art or lab or science. So continuing down this corridor, you see that these large doors, those doors are on automatic stays, so if anything happens, they close automatically or can be locked. To the right is where the food service comes out, and again, it goes to the left where all the students can use that area. Now we're going into the gymnasium. So the windows, so to speak, that you see are semi-translucent. It's something called cow wall, so you don't have direct sunlight that comes into the courts. And you have views up above from the weight room and the fitness rooms, going back into the main spine. To the left again is the media center. The right, that would be the school store. These doors would also can be locked for security as well. And then we're finishing off by going into the auditorium. And the furniture and all the type of finishes we're still working through, so this is just placeholders to kind of give you an idea of some of the shapes that we would have in the space. And we finish by going back into what would be the main spine, looking at the main, well, that's now looking at the media center, reading area. Any questions?
Comments, questions, members of the committee? Ms. Hazelwood.
I just have a couple of questions. Auditorium seating, how many seats?
750 and 8 handicapped.
Okay, the science lab rooms, have any of the science department heads in our schools been part of the building of these classrooms?
We've met with department heads and they have reviewed and given us feedback, yes.
Okay, and can you tell me what some of their concerns may have been about those rooms?
For science? Yeah, it's mainly about flexibility.
Okay.
And science is very difficult because you have areas that you need to have your sinks and your ventilation areas and such, but the tables itself are made in such a way that they're movable, so they can either be doing it with a group of 4 people around one desk, or they can be in a lecture style, or they can be in a work style.
Okay. I know there had been some concerns about sinks or water being accessible from the middle of classrooms. Has anything been addressed concerning that?
Normally, in the modern design of schools, we don't have water or gas in the middle of a classroom anymore. They're on the surrounding areas of the class itself.
And so the gas is still, they still have that built in?
If a classroom, and I'm talking in general now, if a science classroom, whether it's biology, chemistry, or whatnot, those are usually in the perimeter of the class, of the walls area. So that's easy that we can actually get them into the walls itself. And that gives it the center of the classroom flexibility for however the teacher wants to deliver their class.
And that's going to be in those labs, correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hazelwood. Anyone else? My comments would remain the same on Tollgate. Beautiful design. I give you points on the design. I award all points on the virtual walkthrough, though, to Katie.
Oh, totally. Very much so.
But again, my comments with regards to Pilgrim remain the same here in terms of practicality on, fixed seating and parking and everything else. So I have other comments outside of this presentation. This is your last slide, correct?
Correct.
Great. I have just a couple comments on the total project, which might be best for Mr. Spiegel. Does anyone have anything else for?
I really do like the, in the dining areas where you could have a lecture as well, the way it's set up there. That's a great use of space. And I know that there are teachers that would take advantage of that. So I really like that.
I think in both schools, we follow the methodology that there's flexibility in all the different spaces as much as possible.
So that's great. Thank you.
Anything else for this speaker? Lena? So before we turn it over to public comment, I think there's just might be a few questions on the total project in general. Maybe we just start all the way down the end and work our way down. If you have nothing, you could just pass. Ms. Backus, any final thoughts, comments, concerns? Thank you very much. Ms. Hazelwood.
I just want to say thank you for all the work that's gone into these presentations, a lot of forethought, obviously, a lot of planning. And as I've said from the beginning, I'll say it again, let's just give this community as close a product of what we presented to them when we asked them to approve the bond. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Hazelwood. Ms. Kirby-Chapman.
Thanks. What does demolition look like during the school year?
So what is that's a great question. Being a parent, especially a special needs parent, I have concerns myself about things like dust, noise, vibration. One of the advantages of hiring a construction manager, especially one like Dimeo, is their impeccable record on safety. So that's number one. Safety is always number one. We will establish step backs, we will have security cameras, we will have fencing, of course, we will have signage, we will have all of those things, as well as nonstop supervision during working hours by the construction manager and by left field. Left field plants somebody on each site, and we are there to check the construction managers, right? It's a double system of checking. But for specific things like noise mitigation, right? We work with this principal and say, what are your testing days? Do you have certain things going on that we need to reduce noise? We work around the schedule. For things like dust control, we have things, they're called colloquially water buffaloes. These are, think of, anybody who's ever been skiing has probably seen those snowmaking machines. Think about one of those, but it's spraying water. And what that mist does is it weighs down all of the particles that could be coming in the air and keeps them from traveling off-site. We also have to review our demolition plans with the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. There's a lot of steps that go into it. So we're more than happy once we get a little bit further on to show you guys what a demolition plan looks like. But there'll be separate logistics plans and things like that specifically for demolition. And as we plan on doing before construction starts, we will have what we call abutters meetings, which is when we make ourselves available to abutters to come in and tell us their concerns. And again, it's all about pivoting, just like how we're designing these schools to be flexible our goal in project management and construction management is to be flexible as well. So that's kind of the abbreviated version, but it's a very, very detailed and very thoughtful process that we go through when it comes to demolition.
And with both designs, being that our schools will be very inclusive, do we have options for gender neutral spaces?
That's a good
Is that
question
part of
for
the
the
designs? 'Cause I
for the
didn't see it.
designer. So we always have single-use bathrooms and things like that. If you're talking specifically about toilet facilities,
Yep.
there's always single-use bathrooms spread out throughout a facility per code. So we do have those. What they're titled, I'm not aware of.
So we have spaces, at least, in this design. Ooh. Okay.
Anything else? Nope, great. Mr. Testa.
Thank you. I just have one, Mr. Spiegel. Could you speak to, social media has made a big thing about that we're building these schools without air conditioning, so can you just speak to that, the system we're going to put in here? And I know the engineer is here.
So, yeah, I'm going to bring on the engineer, but I'll suffice it to say that that is not correct.
How you doing, everybody? My name is Dave Hippolito. I'm from Griffith and Berry, and I am the HVAC engineer, project manager for both these projects. And just to kind of explain how or where we are with the system here, it's not that the building itself is, I would say, about 60% fully air conditioned. Now, the term air conditioning gets kind of thrown around on what it means or how it's structured. So when I say about 60% fully air conditioned, your big spaces, your dining spaces, dining commons, auditorium, administration that's there year-round, or things that might get year-round summer usage. Auditoriums, you might have some summer events. Your gymnasiums, you might be hosting summer school programs there, activities of that nature. Those will all be fully air conditioned, meaning that on a design day, like August when it's 85, 90 degrees outside, it will be 75 degrees inside that space and comfortable. The other spaces that will have air conditioning as well is administration offices, office spaces, and also the life skills rooms will also have air conditioning as well. Now, when we come over to the general ed side of it, the general classroom side of it, the design approach there is what gets termed as tempered air. It's ventilation air, the required ventilation air that's required to meet code and meet design for the projects. That ventilation air has been run through an air conditioning unit during the summertime and been removed the moisture, so it gives a dehumidified feeling in the classrooms. What that system will do is when your kids are in school, that operation, that timeline, it will feel like it's air conditioned in there. It will feel cool, teachers, operational, it will feel comfortable in the space. What it won't do is in August, when the students aren't there, is it won't meet 75 degrees. So this is where you're actually buying the system that meets your needs. You don't need to have air conditioning in August when there's no students there, and you have the system that meets your needs when the students are in place. So that's how the school looks. So a lot of it is, again, the major spaces, the big spaces, the year-round spaces, those are fully air-conditioned. The spaces that are not year-round, primarily is a heating required space because it's during the winter time, and then you have September that might have a couple warm days, and you have some warm days going to June. It will feel very comfortable in there. Now, to give you some track record before we get a couple more questions about it, is this design approach has been used for many, many schools. East Providence being one of the ones that you might be familiar with well, but that's not our only one. We have probably 30, 40 schools that have this design. Never an issue. They get very, very comfortable. Most teachers are very, very happy. They're coming from a school that used to have univentilators that had no air conditioning, very hot, very clammy, and they're going into a school that has conditioned air, properly ventilated air, and it just creates a really good environment in this scenario. And not to, maybe this helps the community a little bit, my community just built a middle school. I live in Somerset, we built a middle school. This is the system I endorsed, this is the system I designed, this is the system that my kids are going to school with and my community teachers are going to school with also, not only in the middle school level, but they like the approach because we have a high school that has the exact same design. So the high school in Somerset Berkeley, is the same design that's in East Providence over here, and it's the same design that's coming online in Somerset Middle School right now that I stand behind and you guys will be very, very happy with, and you're not paying that extra premium to have a fully air-conditioned school when you don't even need that piece of it, that premium.
The other thing I want to add is the system is fully reimbursable by RIDE. That's an important note as well. And then the other thing is all other high school projects this is the same type of system that South Kingstown, Pawtucket, all of school projects are putting in this type of system.
Anything else? I think so. So I have a couple things. Go figure, right? I hate to throw you a curveball here because you've been great and very open and honest. I'll start with my concerns, a couple questions, and end on a high note. How's that?
Oh, okay.
First, the concerns. In the presentation you provided to us tonight, 80% of the costs put us at $280 million for construction. Using Pilgrim at 204,000 square feet at $700 approximately a square foot, and Tollgate at 210,000 square feet at approximately 700,000 a square foot, comes out to $289.9 million. So right now we're $9.9 million over on that.
That's right where we're supposed to be at schematic design, honestly. If you look at East Providence High School, I think they were $44 million over budget at schematic design.
Okay.
This is part of the process, and the design continues to be more efficient, and right now the reason that our cost per square foot is, you have to understand we're at schematic design.
Yep.
There's a lot of assumptions that need to be made, and people, as a form of risk management, you need to protect yourself and provide a little bit of movement upwards so that, again, you're saving your contingency but still building in numbers that work for the project. As the design moves forward, those assumptions get reduced, and we bring the project in on budget.
Great. My next concern, we could do rapid fire
Yeah,
here, so that way we
sure.
could respect public comment coming up. Increasing sunlight, but only going 60% HVAC in a building. Any concerns there?
These aren't the windows that are, these aren't your windows that have been installed in schools previously. They're new windows. They've got special glazing on them. They're insulated the proper way. And then the school has to be built to the northeast. Another authority having jurisdiction, right? We've talked about these, is what's called the Northeast Collaborative for High Performing Schools. That means we need to build with certain sustainability requirements, daylighting requirements, things like that. The windows specifically are an item that come up in that in terms of how much energy do they release, right? Because we don't want to be paying for energy that's going to go right out a window. But more importantly, how much heat does it stop from coming in? Because now you're paying even more operations cost if you're just letting in heat into a building.
Understandable. Quinn told me to stick with glass here. Glass on the interior of the designs. Any concerns from a safety perspective with regards to lockdown procedures? Because now you're kind of looking into like a fishbowl, and it's going to be difficult to hide.
So specific spaces in the building, we're not going to go into exactly which specific areas have bullet resistance to them. I'm not going to, it's a security issue, so I don't feel comfortable talking about that right now, but it has been thought of. But a main thing about these comprehensive schools is an item that we call porosity, which is a long way of saying that we want the spaces to be able to interact visually with each other. This is one of those things that I personally support. For those that don't know, I serve on the board of directors for a nonprofit that tries to get kids involved in the architecture, engineering, and construction industries. And one of the things that we're so passionate about is having kids that might not be interested in those programs, having them the ability to see into those programs so they can see the types of work that's going on, to maybe see if we can recruit more kids to get into what I think is a fantastic industry. I mean, he looks like a mason right there. So like those are the type of things that we're trying to do. We don't want to eliminate all of it. Right now, you've got a school where most of the classrooms don't have any natural light whatsoever. So we want to make sure that we keep as many windows, not just to the exterior, but to those interior spaces that they've got porosity, so light can flow through, but also as a security measure, right? Teachers can see what's going on in other parts of the building. So hopefully that explains it. I know that was a little long-winded.
Okay. Yeah, that's great, and I appreciate that explanation, and I'm glad that consideration is being given to security and safety. Slightly concerned on the capacity of both schools, and it limiting growth in student population. Obviously, we want to see an increase.
Yeah.
You know, one of the biggest qualms out there is that we're seeing a decrease in our population while you're building 2 schools rather than just 1. So the hope would be that we build 2 schools and grow our population. A lot of students going to homeschooling, whether that be for health reasons, behavioral reasons, concerns with the facility not being safe or healthy and, you know, enough for the students. You know, hearing that we're around like 1150 for the 2 sites approximately doesn't really allow us for expansion there. And then we're also seeing in the city of Warwick a huge increase in houses being built.
Yeah.
And, you know, and to quote my colleague to my left here, you know, not all those houses are going to be consumed by, you know, parents or you know, couples that don't.
It's not. Yeah, it's not going to be all over 55 housing, right?
Yeah, exactly. So. Just slightly, that's a concern of mine that I would just want to get onto the record there, and you know, as I've stated with the other things. Do
you want me to address, actually, just quickly?
Yeah, please, go for it.
So, their design parameter in terms of enrollment is based on the demographic projection 5 years from now. That is how all of the funding is based on the amount of students that you're expected to have in 5 years.
I wish I didn't open this can of worms.
So, there's that. But having said that, I believe we've actually designed slightly over what our projection is. Is that correct? Yeah. So we've been approved to build over what our projection is because of just what you said. If you build it, they will come, right? We saw this with East Greenwich opened up their middle school 10 years ago. So the idea is that you build a slightly over so you can, if more kids come in, you can get them into the building. Also, there's difference from your current schools is that there's so much more of these flexible spaces, right? There's so much more of these other spaces. So, you know, your class sizes are going to change a little bit because now you can do small group learning over here and do this and this and this. It's pedantic. I know I'm being pedantic. I apologize.
So with the increase in housing in Warwick and the possibility of the student population rising, 5 years from now, if those numbers go up, we could possibly have an issue on our hands.
So we've built you a little bit bigger school than what the demographics are telling you that you're going to need. Okay. We've pushed RIDE's envelope, I think, as far as we can on that. That being said, you know, your classrooms right now are designed, and the spaces are designed for not the maximum amount of students that they can hold, right? We're trying to get as many spaces into this building, so we're playing a little bit of a game where we work with the teacher's contract and things like that. So I think the spaces are under the teacher's contract right now. Yeah. Yes. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
My last question. This comes from a resident. Building PM and turnover post construction. You brought this up to us kind of several months back. Could you just very high level, because we'll have another meeing, you know, in October, giving another update on the status of the projects. What are we looking at there?
So left field and Demio, and of course the architects, will be engaged long after this project is completed. You've got warranties that we need to keep an eye on, but more importantly, we want to keep a really good eye on your mechanical systems, your HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Left field assigns our own MEP expert to each project. To this project, we've assigned Carlos Montanez. He's a professor at UMass Maritime. They go through all of your buildings. They attend every single one of the trainings. They watch your buildings get commissioned. They make sure that what you are moving into is correct and that you have that long after we leave the project. I can speak, knowing Carlos, he was called back 4 years later to a school in Brookline. He went, and he still was working on solving problems with them there. So, but more importantly, we want to make sure that you have enough time in your schedule for us to address these items prior to teachers moving in. Because if teachers move in and we're still trying to paint walls, it's going to be a disaster. So we've set this schedule up so that we've got 2 months to figure out all those little quirks that are still left in the building and get things running perfectly day one when students are in the building.
Great.
But yeah, we'll get much more into that, I think, in probably another meeting.
Thank you for that. I just want to conclude, nicely done by both Sam and Sococcio and Associates. The buildings look great. Appreciate everybody coming together for this update for the public. Hopefully you guys can help us out again with another one. Likely that third week of October there. That'd be great if we can have another one, because then Tollgate will be a little bit more through, its SD process, and Pilgrim will now have evolved a little bit more. And, obviously the update won't have to be as lengthy because the duration between the updates, has closed a little bit.
We
So
will serve as requested.
I appreciate that. And again, happy for you. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I
Yes,
just?
Mr. Testa.
Thank you. With respect to potential future population growth, I think we have to realize that even if this district over the course of 4 years took in 500 more kids, you can't assume they're all at high school. So you're going to have 500 students would be a dramatic increase. That would be spread out over potentially 13 grades, including kindergarten. So, even if you had an extra 100 kids at each high school, you spread them over 4 grades, you're talking 25 kids a grade. So I think capacity-wise, you design it a little bit bigger. I'm not as scared as all of a sudden, we're not going to 12,000 kids or 20,000 kids. That demographically, I think that's impossible. But I think
You got to meet the Shields family.
So, but I'm not concerned that it's going to be like a Claiborne Pell with the day it opened, it was too small, because they designed it too small.
And we designed it we pushed the envelope as far as we could, and the hope is that these new schools are going to bring kids back into the district as well, right? You're going to have brand new sports facilities, right? You're going to have state-of-the-art schools, top of the line career technical education programs. The idea is you bring some of those students back in and reduce the amount that taxpayers spend on public schools in other districts.
Great. Thank you. Do you yield? You're all set. Any other comments? Yes, thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're now on to Part C of our meeting, public comment on agenda items. Individual comments will be respectfully limited to 3 minutes per person, with public comments not to exceed 45 minutes. Though the content of comments will not be restricted, it is the hope of this committee that citizens, committee members, and the administration alike will be respectful of each other's right to speak, tolerant of different points of view, and mindful of everyone's time. This public comment period is for agenda items only. A second public comment session, nope, here it is, it's right now. Speakers are asked to state their name for the record. Any individuals looking to comment?
Good evening, Rob Cody from Ward 7. I'd like to thank the presenters for an excellent presentation. It's clear the expertise and hard work has been shown on these beautiful schools. And I have no critique there, but I do have a critique basically on the overall presentations. I'm really disappointed that this committee has failed to allow the residents of Warwick to ask questions on the largest project that's ever been undertaken in the city that we'll be obligated to pay for. The entire project's presentation from day one has been disingenuous, to say the least. Every aspect of the project as it was sold to the people prior to them voting on it has changed. With the exception to one 7 a.m. meeting from the school construction committee, residents have not been able to ask specific construction-based questions. And I have a lot of construction-based questions because I've been in the business of building schools since 1996. As I told the body 2 years ago, that as they presented to the public in its original form, that you'd never be able to build 2 schools of 503,700 square feet as presented for the price that you sold the public. As of this date, neither the administration or the city council has told the public what the term of the bond will be, so we don't know how much we're going to be obligated to. First it was 20 years, then they said possibly 30 years. 30 years adds an extra $50 million to the taxpayer, which we don't even know yet. From the $85 million error in the Stage 2 application, which I had issues with, to the third-party review that Mr. Testa refused to give to the public, which, as I told you at that point, that your steel package was absolutely laughable, and when your third-party review came back, we added another $12 million. So, you know, then we had an $85,000 review from the city council, which anybody that had any math education whatsoever, such as a 5th grader, with one calculation, they could have come up with exactly to the number that the Alana Corporation came up with. But I do have some questions, but I will start with an inquiry. So your OPM has told us that these schools are going to cost us $700 a square foot. I told you 2 years ago they'd be north of $700 a square foot, and I'm going to tell you again, they're not going to come in at $700 a square foot. Every school that I'm on currently right now is north of $700 a square foot. But the OPM that we have that just told us that is currently engaged in 5 schools.
30 seconds.
Oh, come on, Sean. The schools that they're on, the Pickering Middle School, $732. The Galvin Middle School, $853. The Memorial High School, $863. South Shore Votech, $881. And the Whittier Vocational, $945. Questions that I have, you know, relative to construction is how many tons of steel? Is it a moment frame building? Will the school be a Category 4 shelter, as Pilgrim is currently? How many yards of concrete? A playing field's included.
Apologies, sir.
And what will the bond underwriting fee be? We have to pay for these things. And I got 3 minutes over the course of 2 years, and I can't even ask a technical question, and that is shameful. And so here we have a city council who quells the voices of the people, and now you guys are doing the same thing, and you should be ashamed of yourself, because we have to pay for this. And I'll close by saying, Sean, it might be difficult to look down the future and say, hey, we're going to have room for growth, because smart parents are going to look at the tax base in the city. And when we have to pay for this, when our taxes are already scheduled to go up, maximum tax increase for 5 years, people may not want to come to Warwick just because we have pretty schools.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It's a tough act to follow, but I will try to follow it. My name is Jim Garcia. I'm a product of Warwick Public Schools. I've coached at the middle school and the high school basketball. I run the Warwick travel basketball program. I understand that these schools are academic first. They're being built for student athletes, not athlete students. So everything I'm going to talk about for the next 2.5 minutes, I understand that the academics are a priority. Looking at the schools, there's one gym. Every school in the state that Warwick is going to have to compete against, whether it's East Greenwich, whether it is North Kingston, whether it is East Providence that was just built, has multiple gyms. So we're talking about people wanting to come to the city of Warwick. I personally think that the city of Warwick offers a lot more than, you know, you can move to the middle of Ponagansett. You don't have much. You can move to Narragansett where you have to take your own trash privately out somewhere else. So the city of Warwick offers a lot more than people think, first of all. Second of all, but if we're going to build these schools from an athletic standpoint, they have to have 2 gymnasiums. They have to have 2 gymnasiums. And we have the wrestling room and we have the all-purpose room. Those rooms need to hold parents that can come and watch their kids wrestle, can watch their kids cheerlead. Otherwise, it's just completely wasted space. It is completely wasted space if you cannot hold athletic events in the you call it the wrestling room. But if you can't hold a wrestling meet there, it's a completely useless space. I think that, again, I'm speaking more on the athletics. I think the academics, I'll leave that to people that are far smarter than me to talk about the academic spaces. But again, somebody said it a few minutes ago, if you build it, they will come. If Warwick has 2 unbelievable schools with unbelievable athletic facilities, there are families that prioritize academics just as much as athletics. So I think we need to be very mindful of that. They are student athletes, they are students. It looks like we have fantastic auditoriums and art spaces for those that are non-athletes, which is amazing as well. But again, if we are going to compete with the North Kingstons, the East Greenwich, the East Providence school that was just built with 2 unbelievable gyms, both of these projects need to have that, Pilgrim and Tollgate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Nick Durand, also a product of Warwick. I'm a teacher in the district also. I'm a lead content phys ed teacher here at Warwick Veterans. possibly looking to move up to the high schools at some point. I've coached in the district now for 15 years, teaching for 15 years. I have my own kids are 8 and 6. They're both in elementary schools. I voted yes to pass this. You know, I want, as a taxpayer and as a parent, for my children and all the kids that I teach to have this opportunity. I believe we have one shot to do this and to do it the right way. Obviously, I'm an athletics person. I coach. I teach phys ed, so I will speak to that. Academically, phys ed is a very important subject. Many people may not agree, but echoing what Mr. Garcia was just mentioning about space for the second gym, both schools currently have a second gym. And as a teacher, having 4 phys ed teachers or 4 classes going on in one main gym, and then hopefully some people can go into the weight room, which looks amazing. The dance area, the second gym is going to be a priority. It's going to be a need, just academically for those spaces. Athletically, you know, as Mr. Garcia has mentioned, you know, youth groups throughout the district, we have a really tough time scheduling any youth groups outside of just our schools time to use these gyms. And we want these kids to stay in the city. We want them to stay in the district. Having that second gym allows for better scheduling and easier access for those kids to stay. Moving outside, I'm a Tollgate baseball coach. I've been a Tollgate baseball coach now for 15 years. And this looks amazing. I would urge you, as I mentioned before, we have one shot to do this. Can we please turf all of these fields? It allows scheduling for other teams to, you know, if somebody else is practicing, you know, you can use the baseball field. It's turfed. It's not going to be an issue. If we don't turf these fields, especially at Tollgate, it looks like it's at the bottom of the hill. I feel it. I mean, we see it here at Vet sometimes. It floods, and we have to postpone games for days because the field needs time to dry out. I think just systemically, like, we're going to have a major rain issue.
30 seconds.
Thank you. If we don't turf these fields, like I mentioned, you know, I want this for our families, the students that we teach. If we have one shot, let's do it the right way. Turf all the fields and get that second gym. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Matt Hodge, product of Warwick Schools, taxpayer and teacher emeritus from Tollgate. I really enjoyed the presentations and got very excited about what I see there, and a little bit jealous of the folks that are going to get to use that building because I won't. But I wanted to think outside the box just a little bit because Tollgate, especially up on the hill as it is, and since we're building a 3rd story on it, if you look across the CCRI, I don't know if it's going to be higher than CCRI or not, but is it possible to, I know it's not budgeted right now, but to build some structure to that 3rd story to allow, in the future, perhaps building an observatory up there or access to that roof to take advantage of its location, the height on the hilltop, away from a lot of the city lights, and Pilgrim doesn't have that option because they're near the airport, but Tollgate's well situated for something like that, so maybe a little bit of steel reinforcement on the 3rd story for potential expansion into some observatory or something like that. So that's a little outside the box, but why not do a little forward thinking? And I can attest that though we don't have a lot of 85, 90-degree days in June and September, those rooms do heat up. I'm a little bit skeptical about the cooling right now because my classroom was in the 80s for the end of the year and the beginning of the year for a month at a time and maybe more. So I hope your system works. And one more thing is, I don't know if it could be included in the budget or if it's something the state pays for, but you know, any kind of renewable energy option, you know, solar panels on a parking deck. Tollgate is a great place for some wind turbines or something like that. So why not look into something like that? I don't know if that's a recoverable cost, but all right, that's all I want to say. So thanks for the presentation, and I hope these schools come to be.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bill Russo. I'm a teacher at Tollgate. I'm also the athletic site supervisor up at Tollgate, phys ed teacher. 2 kids currently in the Warwick school system. I love the inside of Tollgate. Beautiful. I've had the opportunity to meet with Socosio twice to go over some of the design around the gym. My biggest concern is the exterior of Tollgate. There seems to be some discrepancy because back and forth, we started with 2 practice fields outside the turf field, then they were totally eliminated. Now it's showing 1. So I just want to make sure that that 1 field is still currently in play, because if not, we're going to have a world of trouble trying to schedule games and events with 1 turf field. That's no better than what we have now, where we travel the city of Warwick to City Park, everywhere else. Lights have been eliminated on the softball and baseball fields to save money. Elimination of the outdoor basketball courts. Terrific outdoor phys ed learning space, gone. Tennis courts. I'm not a geotech surveyor, but I can tell you 10 years ago, I stood on the Tollgate tennis courts when they were condemned. A company came in to, quote, fix them, and what I witnessed was the sinkhole in the back of the tennis courts was stuffed with the fencing and the rebar and the tar from the existing courts to deem them safe. About a 100-foot drop-off, the ball goes over the fence, you're not getting it, you can't send kids around. I'm not lying when it's a sinkhole to 100 feet. So if they can find a way to fix them, God bless them. But, and if that doesn't work, which I can't see happening, where are they going to go? Doesn't seem to be any space for them. The extra gym was talked about. We have the worst upper gym in the world at Tollgate. It's rented out 7 nights a week during the winter. Terrific source of revenue. Warwick firefighters, Apponaug girls softball. I don't know where they're going to go. Reduction in the gym capacity twice, down to 750. For a school of 1,200 students, not going to cut it. Elimination of the upper walking track. Great for students, especially during the winter months. So, I mean, the bottom line for me is there has to be some contingency planning, especially with Tollgate for the outside. You know, in the 80s, the 90s, Tollgate football looked into trying to put lights in. They realized they couldn't do it because of the drilling and the ledge. So I just think we need to have a severe contingency plan for Tollgate if all this falls through. Thank you.
30 seconds. Thank you.
Afternoon. My name's Bill Paola. I live over by Pilgrim. I'm also running for Council Ward 2. Sean, is it possible to bring up the site plan for Pilgrim?
This is a period for public comment this time. I apologize.
Okay, well, it'd be a great illustration. Okay, what I have is 2 things, and I have to direct my question to Mr. Siegel. Your OPM manager?
It's just a public comment period.
All
I'm going
right,
to pause
so
your time for a second.
Here's the deal. There's 2 issues. One is I'm trying to be a little bit proactive on Fairfax Drive. It's a no-through trucking, and that comes off of Post Road. And we have a lot of tractor trailers and other types of commercial vehicles that do it anyway. So to those in the management, OPM, anybody on the building capital committee, need to know that you have to contact all your vendors. This will also be for Mr. Demio Construction, that Fairfax Drive has to be off limits from Post Road. Now, with a Class A license, and if they're coming from out of town, GPS will take them right to Fairfax Drive. That's the easiest way to get there off Post Road. So instructions should all be for all deliveries, materials, whatever it might be, Warwick Avenue entrance onto Pilgrim Parkway only. Okay? The other issue I have is, and this is not really an issue, I think it's somewhat of an oversight. And being on Fairfax Drive, you have Pilgrim Parkway, which is the main route all the kids take to walk to school. The second road that's mostly populated by kids going to Pilgrim High School is Fairfax Drive. Fairfax Drive is a very narrow 2-lane road. The kids have walking areas of anywhere from a foot to maybe 2 feet, and it just does like an accordion. So, and they're all walking in the street. There's no sidewalks. So that's the other reason why they don't want to cut down Fairfax. I'm proposing that in the design stage, since there's a contingency fund. And I had it priced out where, and I talked to all the people on Fairfax Drive, and it would be just on that one side, Pilgrim side. Though Pilgrim doesn't border it, all the houses do, and you can see it on the site plan. And none of them have really issues with a sidewalk on one side. And it would have to be one that can last 50, 60 years, same as the high school. Quality material, curbing, cement, not asphalt. And it would cost about half of 1% of the entire 175 million. So I got an estimate from a guy that's been in the industry.
30
It's about-
seconds.
Okay, so it costs about 800,000. That's taking 35 homes from the top of Fairfax, near Post Road, all the way to Falcon Street, which is a little bit past Pilgrim Parkway. There's a lot of other issues, but they don't pertain to you guys. That's mostly a city problem. So those are the two things that I like to recommend.
Thank you very much.
Hi, sorry, I'm Sean Wiggins, lifelong Warwick resident. I have 3 kids, 2 currently in the school system. One was sitting in the second row. The second one was in secondary ed. You know, I am a parent first. I think I want to first thank you all for today. I think the plans were fantastic. I mean, you showed an incredible space, learning space. You know, great environments for amenities, great, you know, great learning environments. And I'm going to state that first before I state the next, is that I do believe in the educational element of why we're doing this project. But I'm a father. I am a community volunteer. I'm a president of a Little League. I've coached soccer, coached basketball, much like the other gentleman who spoke. The sports facilities are incredibly important to me, to my community, every person I've spoken to. And I think that it's very important, like Mr. Duran said, to do everything we can to make these sports and athletic facilities as best as humanly possible, right? We get one shot. You guys get one shot to get this right, one shot. And I think that if we allow these athletic fields to not be turfed, if we do things, if we don't turf them and then we don't irrigate them, we don't do things like that, we don't irrigate practice fields, all we're doing is the same things we're doing right now. Our fields are awful. Our fields are awful in the city of Warwick. They're awful at the schools, they're awful in the city. We need better sports facilities. We need better athletic facilities for our student athletes. Student athletes are students. They are incredibly vital to our system. Every student is. But, you know, it's a community, and we need to maintain that community within this new project. And I just think that I don't want to see 5 years after the schools are built, when my son is going to start there because he's 8 years old, and the fields look like they do now. I think that we have an opportunity to the point of the multiple gyms, expand the size of the gyms. Have one at both schools. You need to have a gymnasium that you can fit the entirety of the population. I believe that in the auditorium. I believe that we need to do everything we can. If that means that we have to do other things, we talked about outside the box thinking. You know, we talk about rentals, talk about things that bring money back into the schools. What about sponsorships? You know, bring sponsors. Sponsors our stadiums. You know, everything's expensive. Turf's expensive. Grandstands are expensive.
30 seconds.
You know, but we can find ways to fund this. I understand that we're under our budget here, but I just ask, please, let's do this right. This is our opportunity to do this right. This is the opportunity to do it right for Warwick. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Darlene Netco, lifelong resident of Warwick, graduate of Tollgate High School, class of 1984. So I was at Tollgate when there was no football field until my senior year. There was no auditorium at Tollgate until I was teaching there in 99, 2000. There are classrooms with no windows. So I was happy, and I thank everybody who presented for both Tollgate and Pilgrim to see windows, you know, again in classrooms. I think I have a couple of comments about the amount of glass, though, both outside and inside the building. Right now, for safety purposes, when we do lockdown drills, we shut off the lights, we shut the door, and we keep the kids out of the eye line of the classroom door. If you have so much glass, how do you have lockdown drills in that manner? I'm concerned about the AC. I think it's a misconception that September and June are the only hot months. When you have classrooms in which the sun is beating down all day long, those classrooms get very hot throughout the year. Now, granted, right now we do not have a working HVAC system. We don't have an HVAC system at Tollgate. We have a kind of an H system. The V hasn't worked in a long, long time, and only the admin and the auditorium have some AC. So I guess if we have a modern working HVAC system, perhaps the system described would work. But even though you're not in the classroom in August or whatever, I don't see why you couldn't have a real AC system and you just shut it down in certain parts of the building. But I'm not a technician, so maybe the system that's described will work. I am concerned about academics, the arts, and athletics. Right now, Tollgate and Pilgrim both have 2 gyms. We've heard that. Right now, Tollgate has garbage for fields. I played field hockey. I had to walk to CCRI. The current students who play field hockey still have to walk to CCRI. If we are going to put all these fields in, we need to put the lights in. It's good that we're going to have the concessions and the toileting rooms, because the porta-johns just aren't cutting it. And along with, if you build it, they will come. A number of my peers have mentioned the fact that Warwick is centrally located. We've got the airport, we've got commuter rail, we've got whatever. It would be a great place to hold tournaments. Instead of our kids getting on a bus and going wherever, we have people coming here and we charge money and we make money off our fields and we build more excitement for the schools. We can hold the tournaments and it's good for the entire city, the hotels, the restaurants, whatever. So I do think we need 2 gyms. We need more seating in the gyms. You need to hold everybody in the gyms for our pep rallies and whatever.
Thank you.
And I would like to see, because we didn't really see into a classroom, what a classroom would look. And one more thing, because I've heard from other teachers, East Providence has a dearth of storage space for books. I teach English. We have tens of thousands of books. They need to be stored somewhere. Thank you.
Just want to say I can't believe it took to this meeting, public comment, to find out Miss Necco played field hockey. You've left that out of all of the introductions you've given. My apologies. Sorry, sir.
You're A-okay. Good evening, Zach Colon, homeowner, taxpayer. Hopefully my wife and I, soon to be parents in Warwick. Tollgate High School, class of 2017 graduate. Wanted to focus on 3 things today: security, capacity, and inclusivity. Now, a lot of these are just observations. I have no complaints. I was very happy with what I saw today. Security, wanted to focus on, of course, the glass. I think it's good to hear that bulletproof glass is a consideration. Sad that we have to think that way, but it's very important. And glad to see that it's a consideration. Hopefully we can make sure that that is something we continue to keep top of mind. But also the main office in Tollgate currently is on the 2nd floor. Entrance is on the 1st floor. So glad to see that this will be changed as well, because you have access to an elevator and 4 classrooms on the main office entrance at Tollgate currently. One other thing I thought of, and perhaps has already been considered as well, but in the field, you mentioned, Mr. Galligan, the long distance from the buildings. Perhaps, you see at URI, for example, those blue posts that you can see an eye line of anything from other blue posts with the emergency buttons. I think that could be a consideration as well. To capacity, I will start with sports were never my strong suit. There's a couple gym teachers here that may know that. And Mr. Hodge, I had him for 3 different classes my senior year, so I was a history guy, not my focus. But I know that sports is sometimes the only thing that is bringing students to school. And very important, I think the gym is a serious consideration that we need to look at of increasing the capacity there. I was class president my senior year. I helped plan 16 pep rallies for 4 years, and we were all in bleachers, and that was a school of around 1,100 my senior year. Speaking to 1,100, that's close to the capacity we heard tonight for these schools, and again, we've heard the build it, they'll come. I think that's important. I know we're probably not going to get to 20,000 students at any point in time, but I'd like to see, as like I said, hopefully young family here in Warwick, that others come as well with the new housing. Last thing on the inclusivity space there, I'd like to first touch on the fact that I saw elevators in the illustration. I think that's important as well. As a Tollgate graduate, we saw in the quote-unquote A building, there are no elevators over there, so students that were in wheelchairs had to go from B1 on the other side across under the bridge.
30 seconds.
Thank you. And over the bridge. So glad to see that we have elevators. And last thing I noticed, special education is very important to me as well. And Vice Chair Hazelwood, I appreciate you for bringing this up as well. I noticed in the illustration for Tollgate, we had the special ed wing in one section. And on the original illustration with all those circles, I don't know what it was called, I'm sorry, but that first rough draft, so to speak, we saw that those special ed sections were interdispersed in inclusivity throughout the school. So I hope that, as Ms. Hazelwood mentioned, I hope that was taken into consideration with the special education teachers and parents, that they are included in the area. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Jennifer Hartel, special education teacher at Windman Middle School, heading into my 24th year serving the community of Warwick schools. First of all, I'd like to say I'm, as an 8th grade teacher, part of what I do is transition the students to high school. I think it's important that they have facilities that they are excited to go into and can be proud to attend state-of-the-art buildings that house the programs that they're looking forward to being a part of. I do have one question, not question, but just one comment about a discrepancy that I happened to notice between the two schools. It looked as though Pilgrim had administration and guidance kind of sprinkled throughout the different wings, whereas now they are very isolated to one particular part of the school for Tollgate, which may not lend them to be open and visible as much of the time, or proximity, if there's an urgent matter. It may take, some time to travel wherever from their office if they're all down there at once. I would also like to say, we've talked a lot today about contingencies and whatnot, and I know that we approved 2 positions that were much needed. As somebody who teaches intensive academics and got 3 new students on my caseload in 1 week, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday last year, we don't control who moves in and what needs they have, so we definitely need to have a buffer there. And just moving forward, again, we've talked a lot about planning, thinking ahead. We're going to be, in a few months having another budget meeting coming up, and again, special ed is my interest. And looking at some programs that are already full going in, we want to make sure the students are prepared for the high school. But if there are administrators advocating for other staff that are needed based on numbers, you can't start off a program full and add 3 kids a week. I'm just saying. So keep that in mind as we're moving forward, because the population, we can't know who's going to be moving in. It's not just about numbers, it's about needs as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Bill McHenry, Warwick resident, used to be Cranston. There's a couple of things I seen in your presentation. There was one place where was an outside study area with a parking lot backed right up to it. There's no protection between the parking lot and where the students are in that little winged area. I know you said you were going to meet with the fire department and police department. I would hope that these safety concerns for intruders or whatever, or grandparents who pick up their kids and don't know enough to stop, don't want to run into these poor kids. Another thing I noticed was on the fields, the stadium is used by like 8 different teams. The boys' baseball field is used by 1 team. That's a big footprint. And you've got the outfield fenced in. If you got rid of the fence, you can create a practice field for your lacrosse team, your soccer team, your girls' field hockey team, whatever. By putting that fence out there, you're limiting who can use that big footprint. Another concern is, last year, as all these things are happening, Vets is getting a lot of use. The field over here, you got everybody coming over here. Last year I was here, and there was a track meet with like 400 kids. 1 porta-john. I mean, they're getting you something. 1 porta-john. I sent an email to the person for the city. I said, look, I'm here. We got 2 soccer teams. We got 2 football teams. Kids, practicing other things. And you got 1 porta-john. I said, you think you can put another couple porta-johns? I mean, the kids use it all day long here at the school. Nothing. Grandparents are here seeing their kids. I don't have any kids in the system. I pay my taxes. I'm happy you're getting a new school. But can you at least give us a damn porta-john? I mean, come on. And then you got the fields. You're going to put up grass fields that are going to get trampled. If you put up a turf field and you make it a box, at least it'll be usable by everybody, not just by the baseball team. You look at your picture from the toll gate one, if you were to move your wall to the left, you would fit another field in there. By putting these fields where you are, you're limiting your practice fields. You've got no place to practice for these kids. And one other thing, I hope for the band parents, the outside door from the band room is large enough to get a vibraphone out. Is it a small door or a large door? Because I run into that every place I go. There's always like a 36-inch door, and you got 38-inch instruments.
Thank you.
Evening, Jim Italiani. My wife, Bethlehem Italiani, who wanted to be here, is running for Ward 6. She's been following your yeoman's work for a long time in these projects. My concern, amongst others, but thank you, Sean, for bringing up what we've been listening to for almost 3 hours, is not guaranteed and can change tomorrow. So we really don't know still what the future holds. A few things we do know is that these schools cannot be built for $350 million. They couldn't have been built for $350 million when the initial bids were comprised based on 2018 and 2019 construction figures. Okay. The average school, and most of these numbers are coming from Connecticut because I couldn't get Rhode Island numbers. The average schools built have run over budget somewhere between 19 and 28%. The average additional cost has been over 9% per year from the initial estimate. That's telling us, based on the history of the schools, at least in New England, that we're going to be close to 30 to 50% over budget, which means these schools will actually cost us over $500 million. Whether or not we want to recognize that or not, this is what the numbers from the past have told us. Also, we are not getting, clearly, we know that we are not going to get what we, the taxpayers, voted for these bonds. That is so sad for the teachers and for the students. And even though we really hope that if you build it, we shall come, and I wish we could spend $10 billion on our schools. But the reality is, if we do that, The 5-year projected budget from our city already says that we're going to be in the rears most probably by tens of millions of dollars just within this next 5 years, okay? That our property taxes are going to go up at least 4% a year, okay? And that has nothing to do without reevaluating the values of our properties, which is going on right now. So my friends and neighbors, even though we may have the best schools around, we're going to drive people out, especially the new people with kids coming in, because they absolutely won't be able to afford staying to be a person, a citizen and resident of Warwick. Last comment.
Thank you,
I
sir.
find it horrendously objectionable when we're talking about probably $500 million that you, the school board, does not allow proper and lengthy and extensive conversations by we, the taxpayers, and I find that terribly offensive. Thank you, sir.
Apologies. Thank you.
My name is Jeremy Langell, Ward 5. I have a second grader at Warwick Neck and now a kindergartner at Warwick Neck. I'm very excited about our high schools. I want to thank the team that came out. It's a lot of expertise and wisdom and professionalism. I really appreciate it. And also to our school committee and our building committee. So I feel like we're in very good hands. When we voted on a bond for 2 high schools. That's what we voted on. And I understand that it's your responsibility to make sure that you can come in under budget, do the work, hear all the needs of our constituents, and I feel like that's being done. So I'm really excited that my daughters will get to go to school at these new high schools. I think Pilgrim is where we would go, not sure. And I'm also just really excited by the music spaces and the art spaces. The auditorium, it was glorious to see that. So I'm really excited about that. I did play tennis, but that was it. I don't know anything about turf or anything else. So I trust those experts who've already spoken to that. But thank you, thank you, thank you. Really appreciate tonight. Good work.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Ross McClendon. I'm a resident of Warwick, father of 5. I appreciate the detailed presentations we had tonight of the designs. I would like to just comment on one of the aspects of the designs that stood out to my wife and I is the very generous portion of floor space in the academic spaces that is committed to collaborative learning spaces. These are spaces that I don't recall growing up with in schools that I was part of. And I would encourage the committee as part of your due diligence to work with the administration to ensure that there is a practical and concrete plan for how those spaces are going to be practically used effectively throughout the school day, and also to ensure that the balance of that floor space versus more classical classroom spaces permits the current and projected class schedules that would be needed for the schools to be realized and to be provided to the students. So, and by doing that, just to ensure that these spaces aren't following maybe academic fads of the time, but will be useful for the foreseeable future for our schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick Maloney, Warwick resident, 22 years. I served on the school committee from 2008 to 2012. So first thing I want to do is commend all of you. When I was on the school committee, we were closing schools. Now you're talking about building them. So you do not get enough credit for what you do. I will say that right now. So it's a lot of work and without a lot of thanks. With that being said, I had a question about special education. I did not hear it. I know that you were building in a section and that certain areas were going to have air conditioning and certain areas were not. I hope that special education has air conditioning. It's really important for them to regulate temperature. Thank you. I see some nodding. Thank you. One gentleman already mentioned the outside eating area was protected. to make sure that those kids are safe. I think that's important. Regarding the auditorium, I also agree that the auditorium seating is not enough. But I remember when I was in, and we had things in the auditorium, we had folding seats we could bring out. So if we can't accommodate 1,100, 12, whatever the number is, you know, we have options for that too. So, you know, talk about that because it's much less costly. Regarding the fields, I remember when I was on the school committee, and this was 10 years ago plus, it costs about $1 million a year for the upkeep of the fields. So if you have the opportunity to put in that special turf, and in long-term the costs work out, maybe that's something you should look at. Regarding East Providence High School, which I believe someone told me it was finished about a year ago, the population of East Providence over the last 3 years dropped about 3,000. And we talk about if you build it, they will come. They have 100 more students this year. So if that continues, maybe there'll be 150 or 200 or 300. So if they build it, they will come, hopefully is great. But if that means losing 3,000 people a year in East Providence, then that's also not good because the tax base will be going down and it will be more expensive for the people that stay. Left field was involved with North Providence. How much time left?
33 seconds.
Okay. Was involved with North Providence. They had voted in August of 22 to have 3 new schools. In May of 23, RIDE approved $250 million of construction. In October of 23, so this is 6 months later, the cost skyrocketed to the point where they had to throw out the 3-school plan and cut down to 2. So I want to make sure you know that even though we have the money coming in and we have 2 schools that we want to build, the same people that we hired to do the work had to cut their schools from 3 to 2 in North Providence. Please research that. My biggest thing is the cost overruns, and I'll just use classic Rhode Island, Providence Walking Bridge, $3 million budget, final cost, $21.9 million. So if you can make this happen within the budget that we have and not take every single thing that we need out, that would be great. I'd love to see it. I'm skeptical. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Sean Rainey, Warwick resident, Pilgrim High School alumni, 1991. Baseball coach here at Warwick Vets for the middle school. Just want to start off with, when I have my 8th grade players on my team, I ask them what school they go into next year and why, because it's important to me to know why. I lose out of 10 baseball players that are in 8th grade, probably 4 or 5, half are going to other locations in the state, whether it be Henrican, Pontigansett, North Smithfield, whatever. I ask them why they're going. They said they're facilities. That's the common denominator for all these kids, why they're leaving our school district. We will bring in, not only do we lose the kids, we lose the money that goes with them. We have to pay to have them shipped to wherever they're going. We have to, all our educational money goes with them. So we lose all that money. So we're talking about budgeting and all that other stuff. If we build it, not that they will come, we want to hold them here. We don't want to see them leave and have to come back. We want to keep them here. And with these schools, and if we, Mr. Spiegel, I know we've talked, we need to have the athletic facilities. Kids, somebody said earlier, kids go to school. Some of them go to school just because of athletics. They are athletes and then students because that's how they get through their day. And we need to adhere to what they need. Other than that, I think we just, I love the new schools. I think it's well overdue, just like a sports complex here in Warwick, well overdue. But nobody wants to take on that headache and do it. So I'm glad we're doing it, and we need to do it right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Flanders, teacher at Pilgrim High School Phys Ed, head boys soccer coach at Pilgrim. Been a coach and a teacher for a long time, and been in Warwick when Warwick was the place that everybody wanted to go to when we got out of college as teachers. I graduated Pilgrim in 1989, played soccer there. It was an incredible experience. You know, it's sad that the fields and the facility that, you know, we had then was actually better than what the kids have now, and it's extremely sad to see that. So as far as the gym size goes, at Pilgrim, you know, we sometimes have 3 to 4 indoor classes going on at a time. So, I mean, I see serious safety liability issues by not having a second gym like we already have. When we talk about the fields need to be turfed. They need to have lights. As Mr. Rainey just said, as Ms. Necco said, we're talking about facilities, and kids go to places for the facilities. I can guarantee you right now, all these kids that go to pathways outside of Warwick, if you told them you cannot play sports in that school, you got to play at your home school, they wouldn't be taking a bus ride to Pontegansett if they knew they had to come back here to play their sports. They are leaving because of those things. They are leaving because they want to have a sense of pride. I can't tell you how many bus rides I've been on where I've go to other schools in Rhode Island and outside of Rhode Island that the fields are tremendous, the facilities are tremendous, the lights, stadiums, concession stands, you name it. And my kids leave there wondering, why? Why do they get it? We don't. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with us? Then they come to here to play us. And then I have to listen to it the other way, where they're walking by and giggling because we don't have stands, we don't have concession stands, we don't have bathrooms, we don't have any of the stuff that these other schools have. So the next thing is the loss of opportunity that Warwick loves to do. We love to build things like Mickey Stevens years ago, and then you look at it now, it's an absolute dump. If you build this, they will come is kind of half true. You need to build it right. So if you build it and you don't put lights on the fields and you don't put turf on the fields,
30 seconds.
The rain is gonna come. It's gonna be an absolute dump with dirt out there. If you don't have practice fields that are turfed, you're losing revenue, you're losing all those opportunities. Not to mention the cost and all the other things as far as makeup games, your safety for your athletes. We play 4-game weeks now, and then you cancel games because of weather, and it just backs up the season. It's absolutely a mess. So that has to be addressed. And just please, I beg of you, don't do it wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Bob Jacob. I'm a resident for about 55 years. I had 5 kids that went to Tollgate. I have a couple of grandchildren that are not going to Tollgate or anything in Warwick. And ditto what he said, 100%. But what about the pickleball courts? Nobody? The other question I had is, why are we doing this with masonry? There's hundreds of high schools. I get a lot of magazines and architect. Hundreds of schools, churches, all being made out of metal. The labor is considerably less, and the schools come in 15–20% less than masonry. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Nancy Kernan, Warwick resident. I've listened to everyone's concerns. Everyone has valid concerns. My biggest concern, No, I do not have children in the Warwick school system. I have children that are your ages. So yes, I'm old. Security is a problem. I don't care what you're building. If you don't have the proper security, our children are not safe, period. The second one is selfish. I live right near Pilgrim. I walk that track every day. I don't want all the construction and people parking in my circle with all the construction. You have to be considerate of the Pilgrim Park residents. And lastly, everyone's tired, everyone wants to go home. I agree with many of these people. I don't think you can build it for $350. I honestly don't. I didn't do construction that way, but I'm a construction loan officer, and the cost of building is skyrocketed. There's a problem with numbers. It really needs to be reviewed. Thank you all for your time, and thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to comment? Any other members of the public wishing to comment? Any other members of the public wishing to comment? All right, we're shutting off public comment at this.
Eric Shields. I don't know what ward I belong in, but my kids will go to Pilgrim. Again, as most of you people have heard, right? Sports, right? It's all about sports. It was all about sports when I went to Pilgrim. First off, little off the subject, the comprehensive in the name. No, it's Pilgrim High School, it's Tollgate High School. I understand. You got to include comprehensive in the name, get the funding, blah, blah, blah. We can convince RIDE that it's a comprehensive school. No comprehensive in the name. Thank you. It wasn't comprehensive back then. It's not anymore. One of the things to consider too is when we're building these schools, right, the outdoor fields and facilities will not be available. So where are these kids going to play while that's happening? Gym space, 100%. You need a bigger gym space. You need a second gym. I find it very disrespectful that it should be expected that 9th graders are going to sit on a floor for a pep rally. Should not be the case. Everybody should have a seat on the bleachers. Turf fields, 100%, absolutely. You got to go turf fields. Rentals, rent it out. Put lights on the field. You can have tournaments, competitive. You will be, again, Warwick, it's central. It's near the airport. Let's get some of these teams in. Let's host tournaments, AAU tournaments, right? Travel basketball tournaments. You will make so much money. You will make that money back, right? And that's an ongoing thing. That will be a continuous revenue stream. Again, everybody said it. We have one chance to make this right. But we have to be smart, right? We can't just assume, hey, brand new shiny school, everybody's going to come here. We have to do it the right way, right? That includes making sure everything is ADA accessible, right? All of our spaces outside the school are protected. If the windows need to be shortened on the first floor for security purposes, our flex space, is it appropriate, right? It's not a corporate office where we need flex space, right? How many times in a day is that small room for 5 to 10 kids going to be used? If it's not all day, does it need to be used? I don't know. These are all things that need to be considered. Again, I was a student athlete, but I was definitely
30 seconds.
An athlete first and then a student, right? I love these renderings and the drawings. I'm so excited. As Mr. Galligan mentioned, I have several kids. My oldest is in middle school. My youngest one is just starting pre-K now. So I'm in this for the long haul, right? And I hope that they all stay here, and I hope that their kids go to these schools, and I hope they're just as good in 50 years. So again, we need to do this right. It needs to be done the right way. Please consider athletics more than what we're doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to comment? Any other members of the public wishing to comment? Is this some sick joke tonight? That's fine. Come on down.
The public here.
Could you give us your name for the record, please?
My name is Laura Brown, lifelong resident. I have 2 kids, one in high school, one in elementary school going to 2nd grade. Just looking at your plans with the windows and all that, and I know other people have touched on the security measures and all that, I just want to put a bug on everybody's ear. If I could, if there's something that could be put into place, maybe like a badge system for active students to go along with your plan. I know it's been a long night, but I felt like something like that to be put out there to look, into, that would be great. You want more people to move into Warwick. I think that would be a great thing to know that these kids are secure and future families, they're comfortable with sending their kids to school. I feel like that's huge. So that is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to comment? You sit down. Any other members of the public wishing to comment? Any other members of the public wishing to comment? Seeing none. Future meetings, Health and Wellness Subcommittee meeting, August 28, 2024, 3 p.m. Policy Subcommittee meeting, September 3rd, 2024, 4:30 p.m. Warwick School Building Committee meeting, September 11th, 2024, 7:30 a.m. Monthly School Committee meeting, September 11th, 2024, at 7 p.m. And the next Fiscal Subcommittee meeting is scheduled for October 1st, 2024, at 3 p.m. Typically, I do not like to speak on behalf of my colleagues, but given that this is the last meeting between now and the first day of school, on behalf of the Warwick School Committee and the Warwick School Administration, we'd like to wish all students, teachers, faculty, administration, the bus drivers, everybody that helps us out, a happy, safe, and productive school year. Being that there is no other business before this body this evening, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Made by Ms. Backus. Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. We're adjourned.